if FanDuel wasn't cowards and let me bet on the team that was going to draft Miles Cole before the draft, I would have put my entire retirement on him going to Trent Baalke and the Jacksonville Jaguars. I would have put every cent of my 401k on that happening.
Literally 7th round Trayvon Walker.
Correct.
Like, hey, if Trayvon Walker was actually a 7th rounder, this is who he would be. Like, if Trayvon Walker was not very productive for 5 years instead of 2, this is who he would be. I texted you after I watched Miles Cole, and I said, I think he's going to be the worst player I watched. And to be fair to Miles Cole, he ended up being my 201st player. So they actually got some value.
Welcome to the opening bell of the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. I'm Trevor Sikkema. That is Connor Rogers, joining you guys after the 2024 NFL Draft to give you our official draft grades here on the show. It's everybody's favorite episode. It's the episode that everybody, Connor, I'm sure the comment section will be fine for this one.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody really cares about draft grades, right? This is something that people aren't extremely passionate about and put their entire livelihood into after the draft. It'll be fine. It'll be fun.
No hard feelings. No, everybody will be happy with their grade, even if it's abysmal. There's no new audience members for a show like this. It's just truly the addicts in the comments. So yeah, man.
It's people who have watched every episode that we've done.
Right, and they get it.
Definitely not watching us for the first time.
Your team took a 6th rounder or a top 50 pick. Like, it's okay. Everything's fine. Oh, man.
This is a fun episode. We always look forward to this every single year because, well, that means that the draft is over and we actually get to recap what happened instead of just predicting. Trust me, we love to do that, but it's nice to actually see what really happened and getting to project these players for certain teams. And that's what we're going to do here on the show. You know, it's not just the grading of, hey, this is where this guy was drafted, this is where he was on my big board. There's a couple of nuanced conversations that I can think of right off the top of my head of players who I felt were a little overdrafted, but okay, I can see this a little bit. So we'll walk through that for all 32 NFL teams here as we give your favorite team a draft grade, talk about the outlook, where some of these guys fit on the roster, how we think they navigated the draft, all that good stuff. Connor, how you feeling, my friend?
I'm okay. You know, it's a long couple of days, and I feel good. I joked with you that when we got on before we hit record, that like when the alarm goes off on the day after day 3, your body's just like, the draft's over. Like, absolutely get lost. This is not happening. But we got a lot of work left to do. We are going to grade every team. I know you have a PFF recap show that as you're watching this, you probably already watched that. I got my Jets draft special on SMY that we do every year after the draft on TV. Like, this is, you always forget just because the draft is over. Now everybody wants to know, okay, what does all this mean? Tell me what this means. Right. You've been working on this for 10 months. So it is really awesome that it kind of keeps going for a couple more days, and then the real lull starts.
We're still pedal to the metal here, and like Connor was jokingly but not jokingly said, we know that you guys want to hear our takes of how the draft actually unfolded and how the teams actually did here. So I'm excited to kind of get it underway. By the way, I just want to shout out, thank you so much, everybody who watches NFLSC and follows our work. And guys, we saw you in the comment sections of the videos that we did, the pre-recorded videos, the live streams. The Audric Estime bit was just so alive and well throughout the entire weekend. When Bucky Irving got picked by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, my mentions were just absolutely flooded. And it was another reminder that, like, y'all take in our content and enjoy covering the NFL draft just like we do. And man, it was really fun to get to hang out with y'all in different medium platforms. And just because we only had one episode during the actual draft weekend before this, y'all still wanted to talk draft with us and reached out to us. And it was a ton of fun. Estime truly became the people's champ, Connor.
Yes.
I genuinely think when in the PFF live draft show, I was saying we got to get nonstop estimates in the chat, like, to manifest him getting drafted, and it was just flooded the entire time. So
no prospect has ever been more over than Audric Estime. We created an absolute monster. It makes it so fun when you do something all year and then the moments actually finally all happen in the span of 3 days. Like when Penix got drafted, my mentions were flooded. When Estime got drafted or didn't get drafted, my mentions were flooded. Just people having so much fun with it, and the success of the live stream after night one. Like I got home at 1:30. We started that stream around 1:45, and to have was it 2,000 concurrent? More than that. For most of the time.
More than 2,000 people watching at 3 a.m.
I mean, that's unbelievable. So the support is why we get to do this and keep doing this, and it makes us think, well, if we have that kind of support, we'll keep doing more, bigger and better each year. So just a massive. This show cannot start without a huge thank you to everybody that makes this show a success.
All right, now that the thank yous are, all
thank
out
yous
there.
to fuck yous. No, I'm just kidding. Oh man!
You're tweeting at me,
Chris Ballard. Man, he's really turning into a WWE character before our eyes.
Ballard actually went off here.
Yeah,
all right, we're not starting with the AFC South, but we are gonna do this by divisions, just so y'all can find your favorite team in the easiest way. We'll try to tag it, the timestamps and everything, so you guys can navigate this how you want. Obviously, just let you know, the longer you watch this video, the more it helps us. So we would appreciate if you just watched a lot of the video. But we understand that some people, hey, they just want to hear what we think about their team. It's totally fine. We get it. So we'll start division by division. We'll go by the teams. We are going to get to Ballard, who absolutely went off, especially when they were talking about the AD Mitchell pick afterwards in the press conference. But let's start with the AFC East. And I think we should start with New England Patriots.
I was going to say the same thing because they were so relevant in this draft.
So what'd you give them their draft grade? Well, I'll recap it here. Drake May, Jalen Polk, Caden Wallace, Layden Robinson, Javon Baker, Marcellus Dial, Joe Milton, and Jaheim Bell. That was their draft class of guys that they drafted rounds 1 through 7. Connor, what'd you think about the Patriots haul here?
So pretty good, and I'll start with the AFC East. It's funny we're starting with this one. This is my very boring section of grades, which is probably good. It felt like this division as a whole really came into the draft and took care of the business that was on their checklist. And New England fit that mold for the most part. Now, I gave them a B, and maybe that's a little harsh because they got my QB2 in Drake May, which I thought was a really nice pick for them. And I like the situation that he could develop behind Jacoby Brissett. I don't think he's thrown to the fire immediately. You guys all know how much I love Jalen Polk. He was wide receiver 5. They got him at 37. It's pretty close to where I had him, so I like the value of Polk there. Javon Baker at 110 was a really, really good pick. I think they rebuilt this wide receiver room in the span of a couple of days. And did you see Javon Baker's press conference quote or Zoom quote? He said, "Bring your popcorn. I get people to stand up from their wheelchairs." I'm like, oh my God, this guy is
elite.
Like him and Keon Coleman, Electric Factory. So Marcellus Dial, kind of your classic developmental corner with the kind of size he has. Mm-hmm. Joe Milton,
play safety too,
who is a good call, DB, developmental DB because of the size. Yep. Joe Milton, who's going to stay at quarterback at 193. It's right around where I had Joe Milton. If you're going to take the swing on that kind of talent, I'm still fascinated by the idea of him playing tight end, but I understand why he deserves the chance to start as a quarterback in his career. And then Jaheim Bell, kind of a guy without a position at tight end, but we've seen New England for a long time now look at tight ends like this, no matter the staff, clearly. So, Trevor, the reason I gave it a B was that the one pick that, really, this could have been almost an A-. And I was pretty tough on grades this year. Let me be clear, too. It wasn't like, oh, you did pretty good, you get an A-. I really selectively chose my A's and selectively chose my C's. And then there's a lot of B's in between. I liked Caden Wallace. I thought I was pretty standard on Caden Wallace, having him, and I'll pull him up in just a second, having him at 148. I thought he'd be somewhere from 100 to 160 in this draft.
Yeah.
The right tackle from Penn State. Maybe he can play left tackle for them. That was really early for me for a team that I think really needs to find an answer at left tackle. So I was a little frustrated with that pick. Layden Robinson, once upon a time, I thought could be a big-time guard prospect. He just never figured it out in pass pro. So I have offensive line questions about this team, but I think they got their quarterback of the future, and I love how they rebuilt this receiver room.
Yeah, I see this very similarly. I also gave the New England Patriots a B. You come away with Drake May, which, okay, I can't give you too much of kudos for that. You're picking at number 3. He falls to number 3. This is the obvious choice. Although I do say applaud you for not trading back, not having that temptation. Although I think that the offers were probably pretty good, but I love the overall offensive emphasis theme, right? Quarterback, we draft our quarterback of the future, then we go wide receiver, offensive line, wide receiver. Like basically their entire top 100 strategy.
Self-awareness.
Right. They realized that they had to hit the gas with this, which I appreciate. And I like a lot of their picks, but the offensive line picks, you mentioned it. Caden Wallace, Layden Robinson, big time reaches on my board. Caden Wallace was 142 overall for me. Layden Robinson was 263. Like I saw Layden Robinson as a late round pick that they took in the early parts of the 4th round. So a lot of different people, a lot of different players at those positions that I would have selected over that. That's why it bumps it down to a B for me. But what about the Buffalo Bills? We'll do the Buffalo Bills next.
So the Bills I gave a B-, and listen, I didn't love trading with Kansas City. I know a lot of people didn't. Like, it's just business that seemed weird to me. Keon Coleman at Bills Mafia and Bills Media got to meet one of the funniest, I think the funniest player in the draft. When I interviewed him at the Combine, he had me laughing for the entire 10 minutes I was with him. So it was so cool to see him go viral. I'm really rooting for Keon Coleman. I had no problem with the value there at 33. Like that Cole Bishop was a little early. I think Cole Bishop is a nice safety that everything in front of him, it looks really good. I didn't think Cole Bishop would go in the top 70, but that's a little nitpicking. I thought it was just early for Cole Bishop. And then a lot of, rotational guys. Like Dwayne Carter is going to be a rotational pass rusher if he makes it. Ray Davis is a running back by committee. I think Cedric Van Pran-Granger can start at center at some point in the future. I was very intrigued by that pick at 141.
That's a great pick.
That to me was an incredible pick. But then when you look at, the rest of this draft with Edifwan Olofosio,
yeah.
Olofosio,
you got it.
Nice. Javon Solomon, really undersized, but it may be in a rotational pass rush role. Like, he brings a lot of juice. And then you get a developmental offensive lineman in Tylen Grable that needs to get a little stronger. Daquan Hardy, a developmental slot. And then they take Travis Clayton in the 7th round. So kind of a lot of dart throws there. A B- because there was no pick in this draft, full transparency, Trevor, in the first 4 rounds. Like, Van Pran-Granger might fit this a little bit, but there's no pick in this draft where I'm like, difference maker. The Bills are trying to win a Super Bowl. I didn't think they came out of this draft with any real difference makers unless Keon Coleman develops in a way as a number 1. And I viewed Keon kind of as a volatile number 2-ish wide receiver.
Yeah, I also gave the Bills a B. Did you give him a B-?
B-,
is that what you gave him?
Yeah.
Okay, I gave him a B here, and I originally had it as a B-, but I'm kind of looking at really beyond round 3.
The day 3 was like good dart throws.
Really good. Yeah, I really like what the Bills were. They take Keon Coleman, they take that wide receiver. Look, I had Lab McConkey, I have A.D. Mitchell rated higher. They were still on the board, so they overlooked those receivers. Taking the chance on Coleman, though, it kind of is what it is. I'm not really too harsh on that. The Cole Bishop pick was definitely a reach to me. I do understand it for how the Bills run their defense and like this type of a player, just an aggressive slot type of a guy. But even for just slot players, I have Tyke Smith rated higher. So like I would have gone with Tyke Smith.
Right.
And I would not have gone with them that early, by the way. Like 2nd round, I just think was early overall at number 60. Although you're not picking again until 95. So I guess I sort of get it there, but I would have picked Tyke Smith if you wanted that slot safety role. And if you wanted more of a traditional safety role, I would have gone with either Cam Kinchins or Dadrion Taylor Demerson. So there were just players at the position, no matter how you think that Cole Bishop is going to be used, that I would have rather had there. So it dings that a little bit for me. Dwayne Carter, you mentioned more of a rotational player for me, but I like Ray Davis. I think Cedric Van Pran can be a starter for them. Olofosio from Washington can be a really good special teams player. I think Javon Solomon was a steal for them as a maybe designated pass rusher type of a player, led the country in sacks this past year. So really like their day 3. Rounds 2 and 3 with Carter and Bishop, fine picks, could have been better. That's why I got the Bills with a B. Okay, what about the Miami Dolphins? We'll do the Dolphins next.
So the Dolphins I gave a B+, and it's weird because they are definitely the classic team that like made up a lot of this grade after the first 2 picks. I had Patrick Paul right around where they took him in round 2. Me personally, instead of Chop Robinson at 21, I would have taken Graham Barton at 21. I would have felt like that would have been an anchor for their offensive line with his athleticism would have fit like a glove.
Yep.
There's definitely more risk with Chop. I know they needed pass rush help. I thought they needed one of the pro-ready guys, and they just went. Like Latu versus Dallas Turner, they went, and that hurt Miami. But like if they got one of those three instead of Chop, this is an A, this grade. I don't know if Chop will contribute right away while the other guys are coming back from injury. They take Patrick Paul, future left tackle at 55. Love Jalen Wright at 120. I think he's going to be a star in this offense. I like sneaky, way too hot take. I could see Wright getting more volume in the long-term future than Achane because of the way he's built. So I thought that was a really interesting pick. Mo Kamara, I had him as the top 75 player. They got him at 158. I ironically like the value of the Mo Kamara pick way better than Chop Robinson. Malik Washington as their slot, home run. Like Malik Washington at 184 is the slot in this offense. And then they took Patrick.
And they got Taj. And they got Taj.
And they got Taj who could return punts for you. This was a B+. It really, if they did better in the first round, it would have been a surefire A. And it's not that Chop's a bad prospect, but he comes with a lot of risk in a slot at 21 where I thought there was a lot of players on the board that didn't come with a lot of risk that could have made this team a lot better. But I loved their day 3 so much.
I'm giving the Miami Dolphins a B- here because of those first 2 picks. I wish they would have navigated it a little bit differently, even for who was on the board still. Now, I will admit this. For Miami, this run for them was brutal. From 14 all the way to 20.
They got crushed.
Talize Fuanga, Latu, Byron Murphy II, Dallas Turner, Amarius Mims, Jared Verse, Troy Fautanu. Like, I would have liked all of those players for Miami over Chop Robinson. So that's brutal. If any of those players go a different direction, I think they could have been the pick here. Maybe not, because let's face it, Miami just wants to be really fast and explosive, and that's why they gravitated towards Chop. But y'all know my feelings on Chop Robinson. I think he's a limited kind of designated pass rusher. Now, Chris Collinsworth on our show made a really good point. In Miami specifically, it's hot. Okay, like conditioning's a different. It's a different beast down there, especially when you're playing games September through November. You have to have a deep rotation of pass rushers. That is part of playing in Miami. So, like, even if Chop Robinson is a designated pass rusher type, it holds value for Miami with that deeper rotation. So, look, I don't necessarily hate it, but even for the guys that were on the board, I'm with you. I would have rather had a Graham Barton, maybe even a Tyler Guyton as well in the first round for them. And then you look at what they could have had at Patrick Paul's pick, who Patrick Paul gets picked at 55. He was 101 on my big board. I just was not the biggest fan of his. You look at the edge rushers, if you could have flipped the positions, Chris Braswell, Jonah Ellis, like those guys were all still on the board who I think could have done what the Dolphins wanted to do. Now, are they the athlete that Chop Robinson is? No, but I like that draft strategy a little bit better. So I like what they did on day 3 as well. I really like all those names, but that's why I gave the Dolphins a B- because I think that I would have rather them flipped how they prioritized the first round. Maybe even gotten a little bit more aggressive at 21 to trade up for one of those guys in that list that I mentioned who I thought could have been bigger, more impact players. But so B- for the Miami Dolphins. Last team here in this division is the New York Football Jets. Connor, how do you feel like the Jets did?
So they get Olu Fashanu at pick 11 after a savvy flip with Minnesota where they get an extra 4 and 5. Malachi Corley they go up for in round 3. Braylon Allen in round 4. Round 5, 3 picks. Jordan Travis, obviously quarterback Florida State. Isaiah Davis, another running back added to this group. Quantez Stiggers, a defensive back from the CFL. And then Jalen Key is Mr. Irrelevant, the safety out of Alabama. I gave this a B, Trevor. And it's obviously hard for teams because people are going to ask, like, do you not factor in the trade for blah, 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 like in this scenario, losing your second round pick for Aaron Rodgers? I don't. I'm just talking about the draft class. Like, for full transparency, I'm just talking about the draft class. So the Jets didn't have a second rounder. A lot of teams are going to be in these scenarios where they're missing picks. It's just harder to come out of the draft with an A when you don't have a ton of picks. I think the Jets did pretty well here. Number one, I never moved off of Olu. He ended up as player 7
You
for
didn't.
me.
I smiled pretty big when Olu was the pick of the Jets because I just have thought about all of our conversations over the last year and how you have remained firm on Olu Fashanu, and now he's a New York Jet.
He was one of the most static players on my board since summer, like him and Marvin Harrison Jr. It's just he's a great pass protecting left tackle that is built in a lab to play left tackle, and guys like that aren't in every draft, and the Jets get him at 11 at a huge need. Malachi Corley at round 3, like you and I had this conversation. Malachi Corley's a really fun player. This is probably a good landing spot for him because Aaron Rodgers just loves to take quick drops and dump the ball to his targets and let them run. I've seen some people make remarks like, hey, this is like premium Randall Cobb when Rodgers was with him, when Cobb still had something in the tank. And I saw Corley as like a very Cordarrelle Patterson kind of player. The Jets still don't have another true wide receiver. That's why it was like, this pick is really fun, but Mike Williams better be healthy. But Corley, this is right where I kind of ranked Corley as well. Yeah. Braylon Allen, I thought they got good value on, a power back behind Breece Hall. Now you take Breece Hall off the field, and it's like, okay, now we have to tackle Braylon Allen. And he was kind of miscast when Wisconsin moved to his zone scheme. I think the Jets are going to be very gap heavy this year with all the personnel moves they made. Jordan Travis, interesting dart throw in the 5th round. He gets to sit in a room with not just with Aaron Rodgers, but a guy that he'd probably want to follow his career trajectory, in Tyrod Taylor. So I like that pairing. Isaiah Davis pick, I don't understand. People are like, oh, special teams. Like, it's not like he was a special teams ace in college. So now they have 4 running backs on the roster, which means one of Isaiah Davis or Izzy Abanikanda will probably get cut. It's just kind of a weird situation. They probably should have traded all those 4th rounders to end up in that scenario in the 5th. Quantez Stigers, great story. I think the Jets will play him at safety and corner. And then I don't really have like significant thoughts on Jalen Key. I watched him, but he didn't make my top 301. Probably hoping that he's a special team sub-package player on his best day. So just a B for the Jets that addressed some needs and tried to make the most of their picks.
Yeah, I gave the Jets a B+ here. Like the Olu Fashanu pick, you know that I'm a big fan of them going offensive line in the 1st round over a Brock Bowers type of playmaker that was there. So I like that pick. I think they nailed it. Obviously, no 2nd-round pick. I can't hold that against them. I know you kind of look at the draft class as a whole. No 2nd-round pick, so I'm not really holding that against him. Corley, I understand. I'm kind of like hot and cold about it, right? I mean, the cold part is you're right. He's not necessarily a traditional wide receiver. So, if you are truly looking for that wide receiver 2 type of player, I don't know if he'll develop into that for you. But on the hot side of things, you got a wide receiver in the 3rd round that is very unique, that has a very unique skill set, right? He is that yards after catch king. And so if you want to build more of that into your offense, I have to give you props for drafting Malachi Corley. It kind of just depends, and we'll see how this goes, how they are going to utilize him. So I like the pick. I still am going to say, like, getting a talent like Corley was good. Braylon Allen, I figured that he'd be more of a 4th-round pick. But, yeah, it was kind of interesting how they navigated this, because with them drafting 2 running backs here, Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis, now I'm forced to go, okay, well, should you have just drafted another wide receiver here? Like, should you have tried to get a different type of wide receiver? But you look at the wide receivers that were left, and it's not really an obvious choice, right? Braylon Allen gets picked 134. The wide receivers that were picked after 134, Jacob Cowling, Anthony Gould, Aniyah Smith, Jamari Thrash, Bub Memes. I mean, Johnny Wilson's here, Malik Washington's here, but you already drafted Corley, so you're probably not drafting Malik Washington. You're probably not drafting Aniyah Smith. You're not drafting Jacob Cowling. You're not drafting Anthony Gould because you already kind of have that player. So that basically tells me you had Johnny Wilson on the roster, who I obviously would have been a fan of taking, especially at that spot, and Bub Memes if you thought that he was going to get drafted that high. But it's a situation where in a vacuum, I say, man, I wish you would have done this differently. But then when I look at the players who are on the board, I go, okay, it's not like there was this painfully obvious you should have done this type of a player. Maybe drafting another tight end that was more of a receiver could have done that for you. But the day 3 was a little bit interesting. I don't hate the names because I like Isaiah Davis. I like Quantez Stigers. Jordan Travis is kind of just a dart throw, 171. I mean, it's fine. You hope that he's a backup quarterback and a preseason god for you.
Exactly.
But, yeah, I gave him a B+ because I can see things working out for the Jets. Did I read that the Jets also got Leonard Taylor as a
They did get Leonard Taylor as a UDFA, which is that's a good choice for Leonard Taylor. I'll say that.
1,000% it
like,
is.
His agent picked the right team. if he's going to have a shot to make it.
That could, I don't factor that into draft halls.
No,
but,
we don't either. We don't.
Oh, baby.
You and I are recording, and they're not official yet, all the UDFA signings. But, I mean, yeah, I was really low on Leonard Taylor. I still had him in the top 200. He didn't get drafted.
Dude, I had him like 150, and that was basically as low as possible for a player that talented.
Do you know what he was on Arif's consensus board? 117.
No, I believe it.
Man.
And we were lower on him than 117.
Yeah, way lower than that. But it'll be interesting if Saleh can really get through to him and their defensive line coach, Aaron Whitecotton. They've developed a lot of different defensive linemen over the years. So
and he's young too, right?
He's very young.
Clearly
was not ready for the combine.
No.
See if you can get through to him. And he's in a room with Quinnen Williams and
no
Hassan
better
Reddick.
player for him to stand next to at this point than Quinnen Williams.
Staple him to the hip. Because
that's how Leonard Taylor's going to win at the NFL level.
100.
Doing what Quinnen Williams does, that style of play, that 3-technique type of a play. Get him off of the nose tackle spot he played this past year, put him in a 3-tech spot, allow him to be, when Quinnen Williams needs a water break, be like, all right, buddy, get in there. Show us what you got. I have a ton of intrigue for Leonard Taylor going to the Jets. All right, let's move divisions. Let's go to the Cincinnati Bengals to kick off the AFC North. Connor, what did you think of the Bengals draft? I thought it was home run hits for the first 3, but what did you think of the haul as a whole?
I really liked it. I gave it a B+. Amarius Mims made so much sense for this team. They have the 3 biggest tackles on planet Earth in one room. The Bengals were really chalk in terms of where they took guys for the most part. Chris Jenkins at 49, a big run-stuffing defensive tackle, right where you should take him. Of course, there's risk with Jermaine Burton. I snuck him into my top 100. They took him at 80. I think TJ Houshmandzadeh announced this pick and said he's working with Jermaine Burton. The Bengals are clearly comfortable with handling Burton, probably because of the Houshmandzadeh relationship. This could be a slam dunk for the Bengals that might not have worked out everywhere else. We will see how it goes for Jermaine Burton. The only pick I truly just cannot understand is McKinley Jackson at 97. I never saw it on tape with this guy. I didn't rank him in my top 200, I don't think. They took him at 97, and I'll say it's not just the Bengals. The NFL always liked McKinley Jackson. Your guy, Eric All, I'll let you talk about him. They take him at 115.
Let's go, baby!
He has to get healthy. Josh Newton, corner depth at 149. Tanner McLaughlin, I really liked as a pass-catching tight end. I had him ranked higher than this. I had Cedric Johnson ranked higher than this. Athletic, strong edge player that you could rotate, help stop the run. Dejon Anthony and Matt Lee, interesting developmental types. Lee, a very, very smooth-moving center. I want to see if he could stick on this roster. It's a B+ for the Bengals that was really close to being in the A range. Maybe I'll be wrong. I thought they kind of burned a pick in the top 100 on Jackson. Everything else was awesome.
Yeah, and I agree with you. That's why I'm giving them an A-. We're playing a little good cop, bad cop here, and just with the grades, I feel like I'm a little bit higher on some of these. But yeah, I do agree with basically the entire way that you explained it. Amarius Mims, they take him 18th overall. I had him 20th on my big board. They take Chris Jenkins Jr. at 49. I had him 50th. They take Jermaine Burton at 80. I had him 74th. Like, not only are these appropriate values for me, it's really good talent fits. Really good talent fits for their exact situation. And, we all like to say, like, oh, yeah, but this team really nailed their day 3. It's like, all right, that's almost kind of the cherry on top. But what you do in the first 3 rounds matters the most when it comes to draft grades. Like, those are the players that we are projecting that are actually going to get the chance to be these impact players for you. And so I think the Bengals absolutely nailed it with those first 3. I also love all the picks around. Like you mentioned, the McKinley Jackson choice. Look, it should have been Brandon Dorlus or Mekhi Wingo with that pick there at 97. It just straight up should have been one of those guys. They were better football players. They do what I think they're going to ask of McKinley Jackson, to be this sort of like quick pass rushing interior defensive lineman. To me, those picks would have been better used on guys like Brandon Dorlus or Mekhi Wingo. Or if you look at Jackson, you say, hey, he's kind of like this quick guy, but we like him to be a run stuffer. I mean, Jordan Jefferson from LSU, who was picked afterwards, is a better run stuffer. I think Tyler Davis from Clemson is a better run stuffer, right? So however you want to look at this role, I think there were better players to choose from there for the Bengals. But beyond that, Eric All, I genuinely think he could be a starting tight end in the NFL as long as he is healthy. Josh Newton was one of my top corners going into this season. Bad year this year, but corners, everything's very cyclical. He could definitely bounce back to what we saw in 2022. So that's a 5th round option that I love them taking. Tanner McLaughlin, I wasn't the biggest fan of, but in the 6th round, great tight end option for you. He's more of a receiver anyways, and you mentioned Cedric Johnson. He's still figuring it out pass rush wise, but real explosive dude. And for his body type, you take a chance on guys like that. So A- for me for the Cincinnati Bengals. What about the Baltimore Ravens? What'd you think of the Ravens draft here?
Another B+. This division was really strong. Nate Wiggins at 30. I had Nate Wiggins as the 3rd corner in this draft. I think Wiggins is going to be a really good player for Baltimore, a guy that can cover on an island. Wasn't as hot on Roger Rosengarten as everybody else in the world seemed to be. I thought the play strength could be a little better, but he's a really good athlete in pass pro. I didn't think this was some massive reach. I thought it was by about a round. They needed offensive line help, okay? So, you can't kill that too much. Adisa Isaac, speed, length, classic Baltimore pass rusher at 93. Pretty good value. 4th round, they got up there and hit 500 feet out of the ballpark. Devontae Walker at 113 and TJ Tampa at 130. I think Walker could be a number 3 wide receiver with the way he could stretch the field. I think Tampa could develop into a starting corner, and they already got Wiggins, so they're not starving at corner here. So Tampa can kind of take his time and provide depth to that secondary. Rasheen Ali at 165. I mean, I thought Ali was a very underrated running back that just hadn't been healthy recently. And when you go back to his tape a couple years ago, he looked like a top 6 running back in this draft. He just hasn't been that guy recently, so why not? Devin Leary, take a dart on a quarterback at the end of the draft. Nick Samick, a good developmental center because, once again, another guy like Matt Lee that's undersized but can move a little bit, and then Sanasi Kane at outside of 250. So you nailed it, Trevor. What you do in the really first 2 rounds with this team, it's always the first 4 rounds. I thought TJ Tampa was a top 50 player. I thought Devontae Walker was a top 75 player. I really like Isaac. I really like Wiggins. This is what the Ravens do. They find volume in drafts that other teams just haven't mastered that yet.
Yeah, this is a A- draft for me. I mean, could have honestly been an A, but I'll give it an A- just because of the Rosengarten pick. There are a couple of offensive linemen that I probably would have picked above him. But at the end of the day, when you look at how the Ravens drafted versus my board, in the top 130 picks in this draft, they came away with player number 24, 99, 38, 76, 51. That's really good value for this team. And even beyond that, when you give it more context to what Baltimore wants, I think they nailed the player types. They got more of an athletic offensive tackle for Roger Rosengarten, which I like. Even though he's more of a developmental guy, I think they have the time to develop him, put some more weight on him, get him a little bit stronger. And if you can guarantee me that, then even that pick I like. You've got a guy with just so much attitude and competitiveness and fieriness for that Baltimore Ravens defense, which is exactly what they gravitate towards in their defensive backs. I think that Nate Wiggins certainly fills that role, but also I think TJ Tampa does as well. But I'd love the fact that he doesn't have to start right away. He can get a little bit stronger, a little bit better at tackling, and then you've got a potential 1-2 combo that you just drafted as starting outside corners. Love the Adisa Isaac pick because when you look at the Baltimore Ravens and the edge rushers that they have had, it's Odafe Owe, David Ojabo. These are guys who are really athletic, kind of outside linebacker types, and you just drafted more of a steady, this guy could come in, defend the run right away early on in his career, hand in the dirt, be a 5-technique defensive tackle in that defensive end in that rotation. But I love the steadiness that Adisa Isaac brings to this group that has a lot of really good high potential pass rushers, and Adisa Isaac just allows you to, I think, by a snap-to-snap basis, rotate him in and out and stay really strong along the defensive line. So I like that. And then the Tez Walker pick, to me, it's perfect because right now I think the Ravens have a lot of really good either short to intermediate wide receivers on their team. Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman. Obviously, you throw Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely in there as well. Likely sort of became that vertical threat, shot play type of a dude as their tight end too. But think about everything that Lamar Jackson brings to the table, right? As just a rusher, and I'm not saying he's just a rusher, but as just a rusher, when he has his success, you got to keep a linebacker in to QB spy him. You got to have the safeties creeping up a little bit higher because if you let this guy, out of your grasp, out of your contain, he can really hurt you. So Lamar Jackson's presence alone forces defenses to get closer to the line of scrimmage because they got to be able to rally and tackle such a dynamic runner. Well, when defenses creep up a little bit, what can Lamar Jackson do to really hurt you? Hit you over the top. They don't have that guy to hit you over the top. Now they do with Tez Walker. So I hope he comes in with a ton of confidence because I think he could be great for that Ravens team. So I gave this draft an A-. What about the Pittsburgh Steelers, Connor? What do we think about the Steelers draft here?
A for the Steelers.
There it is, folks. He did have it in him.
They finally broke me. Troy Fautanu, top 10 player. Zach Frazier, top 35 player. Anchors on their offensive line. I mean, anchors. Two guys that the grip strength, when they get their hands on you, you are going in the ground. And scouting in this division is different. The type of player you have, the type of football that is played. This division really reminds me of if everybody in the Big Ten was good, like that kind of football, but like cranked up to a 10. That's what the AFC North is. And it requires you to kind of bring in a different mold of player. Fautanu and Frazier will be with the Steelers for 8 to 10 years, and they will be really, really good. Roman Wilson and Peyton Wilson, top 75 players for me. They needed a wide receiver with speed. Roman Wilson brings that. Peyton Wilson, I mean, only reason I was lower was because of the injuries, but I didn't have him this low. This dude could fly around. We know he can make plays. They needed help in the middle of the field. I wasn't as high on Mason McCormick as everyone else, but this is a great situation now where he's going in as a developmental player, which with his athleticism and the level of competition he played at, this is an ideal developmental situation now. Logan Lee, an interesting edge D lineman. Ryan Watts played corner for Texas. He's going to play safety at the NFL level. At least that's how I evaluated him. The Steelers significantly upgraded their offensive line. They got a number 2 wide receiver with speed. They got a player that can be an impact player if he's healthy at linebacker. This is just an awesome, awesome draft for this team.
Not only is this an A+ for me, this is back-to-back A+ drafts for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I just looked it up because I thought that I gave them an A+ in the 2023 draft, and I did. Last year, Broderick Jones, Joey Porter Jr., Keanu Benton, Darnell Washington, Nick Herbig, Corey Trice, Spencer Anderson. And this year, you mentioned the guys that they were able to draft. This was these last 2 drafts for the Steelers have given them so many core players, both as immediate starters and as identity depth guys in the second and third string. Like the Steelers have hit home runs over the last 2 years. I love their emphasis to the offensive line in this draft. Drafting for Troy Fautanu at number 20 when you could have gone different direction. I mean, think of the corners that were still on the board at this time. You could have been tempted by going a corner, and maybe that would have been a good pick. There were some talented guys that were still there, but you hit on what you really need, and that's upgrading the offensive line. We weren't sure if they were going to upgrade that left tackle spot with Dan Moore Jr., if they were going to be okay with it. They absolutely do with Troy Fautanu. But what I love the most about this team and how they drafted was they did not let that scare them away from drafting Zach Frazier at 51 when he was on the board, which I think was great value for a player of his talent. And then when they got to that 4th round, they did not let those 2 selections stop them from picking another player that was left on the board in a BPA approach with Mason McCormick. So in the span of one offseason here, well, I should say 2 because we'll throw in Broderick Jones from last year, they have completely revamped what their offensive line can be and just upgraded the potential of that offensive line exponentially. Incredible job by the Steelers here to do that when they don't necessarily have their answer at quarterback, but they've got some dart throws at the dartboard, if you will, in Justin Fields and in Russell Wilson. But they are making sure, they're like, how we evaluate these quarterbacks, offensive line will not be the issue. And I know these are rookie offensive linemen, so they'll have learning curves. They're not going to be all pros right off the bat. But that identity and how they attack this draft, I loved. Roman Wilson, I loved I love what he brings to the table as a slot receiver, as a vertical receiver, as a guy who'll give you his all in blocking. And then you mentioned Peyton Wilson. I read on Twitter that he may not have an ACL. Like that was why he ended up like falling all the way down there. And hey, ACL or not, I don't care. If he was playing with a knee that didn't have an ACL this past year, it still worked. So to get him where they did, that was LB1 in the class for me, outside of knowing true medical status with him, but just an incredible job for the Steelers. Back-to-back A-plus grades for me here in 2023 and then 2024. All right, last team in this division, it is the Cleveland Browns. How'd the Cleveland Browns do, Connor?
I gave him a B-, and always tough. You don't have a first rounder here. You don't have a fourth rounder here. Mike Hall, a little earlier than where I had him. I think he'll have a lot of success as an interior rusher. Don't think he'll ever be a complete player, but an exciting one. I think Zach Zinner's a starting guard. I had him around 72. They get him at 85. I think Zinner's going to fit in with the DNA of this offensive line. Jamari Thrash, I had just sneaking in my top 100. You get him at 156. Nathaniel Watson, I wasn't very high on him. They take him 206. Miles Harden is where they really made up a lot of ground for the picks they didn't have. I think he's a starting slot. They got him at pick 227. And Jawan Briggs, I had a little earlier than this as a rotational defensive lineman. So the Browns didn't have a ton of picks, and I thought they made up some really good ground by getting role players and what I think is a future starter in Zinner on the interior of the offensive line. B-.
Yeah, I gave the Cleveland Browns a C+ here. I understand that like not having a first round pick sort of makes it tough to look at this draft haul and say like, man, you got a lot of really impact players. But I try to put that aside and try to go, okay, well, you're working with what you're working with here.
Exactly.
Michael Hall Jr. was an overdraft for me, and it's also an area where I think this team is deep. I don't necessarily think that they're spring chickens, right? It's Dalvin Tomlinson, it's Shelby Harris, it's Darius Smith when they kick him inside, Quentin Jefferson, but they're kind of deep in this area, right? They also have Mo Hurst, they have Siaka Ika. Like I don't know how much of a heavy impact Michael Hall is going to have, especially in the short term, a team that's trying to really win right now. Maybe I'm not saying he's not going to give any value, but didn't really blow me away there. And then even the Miles Harden pick, even the Miles Harden pick in the 7th round. Love the value, really good value. I mean, he's picked almost 75 spots lower than where I had him on the big board, but this is the most talented secondary or cornerback room in the NFL. So I don't really see a big area for him to be able to be a big-time contributor there because of how talented they are at corner. It's maybe more of a long-term play. Zinter, I wasn't the biggest fan of Zinter. They're investing in the offensive line. That's fine, but he was a lot lower on my board than where he got picked at 85. I like Jamari Thrash. I like Nathaniel Boogie Watson, I should say. But this was a lower impact draft for me for the Cleveland Browns. And I don't want that to sound like it's just because they didn't have a first round pick. I wanted to contextualize where I saw these guys playing and even the guys that they drafted, what they were going to be able to do. So I gave it a C+. I feel like they could have gone a different direction with how they prioritize things, maybe putting wide receiver a little bit higher, maybe offensive tackle a little bit higher, because I think they've got more questions at offensive tackle than interior offensive line. You might have been able to go for one of those guys where you picked Michael Hall. You could have got like a Brandon Dorlus, obviously, who was still going to be on the board. And I don't want to go too hindsight with it, but you had options for guys that played similar styles to Michael Hall, but maybe they really love him. Maybe they think that he will be a big-time contributor for him. I just didn't see that production potential from Michael Hall early on. I think that that's a little bit of a ways with development. I think he was pretty one-dimensional as a player. So C+ for me for the Cleveland Browns. Let's move on to the AFC South. And we can start with Chris Ballard, who is fired up this weekend when it came to all of his selections. And Chris Ballard's a draft guy, right? Like he loves this. So the guys that he selects, they pour hours and hours into researching who these players are and what they do well and how they could fit in with the Colts. So he's the one who ends up picking A.D. Mitchell, and there were the reports before the draft, A.D. Mitchell, some character concerns. And if you didn't see the clip, well, it's not exactly family friendly, so I'll let you guys go look that up on your own. But Connor, what did you think of the Colts draft here?
I thought this was the best draft in this division, full transparency, and I gave it a B. Latu at 15. Like, if you're okay with the medical, which they clearly are, I think Latu should be the favorite for Defensive Rookie of the Year. He's not, the last I saw it. Dallas Turner's plus 400. Latu's plus 700. I'd have that flipped. I think Latu's going to do really well in this defense right away. Adonai Mitchell at 52. Like, this is my argument of where you take Adonai Mitchell. Can you get him to dial in full time? He doesn't have to play right away. He doesn't have to just take Alec Pierce's role from day one. They can ease him in and kind of get him right and get him invested in their program. And Ballard put on quite the promo with the press that if Mitchell watched that, I think that's how you get a player to fully buy into your program and the belief they have in him. The one weird pick, Trevor, like Matt Gonzalez at 79. I thought he was more of a top of round 5, end of round 4 kind of player. Didn't know if he's going to be a guard or a tackle. At 79, it feels like they're really, really invested in him. I know he really health is a big thing for him. Tanner Bortolini at 117. I like that a lot. Guard, center, flexibility. Anthony Gould, excellent punt returner at 142. Jalen Carleys, I like Jalen Carleys. I think he's a linebacker, not a safety. I'm going to be very curious how they use him. Jalen Simpson at 164, cover-only player. We've talked about the tackling issues we have with him. Safety, corner, kind of hybrid. Micah Abraham, big-time ball skills for Marshall, developmental corner. And then Jonah Laalu, who was not in my top 301. This is just meat and potatoes Chris Ballard draft. Like pass rusher that I think could be a double-digit sack guy. A high upside, low floor wide receiver. Offensive line depth, special teams depth. No problem with it at all.
I gave this draft an A-.
Well, you've been like Mr. Latu. So it's
you sit and wait, weren't you higher on Latu in the end than I was? I had him at 10, so I can't remember.
No, you were higher.
Okay, all right. So look, I love Latu. I think this is huge for them, especially with Brock Bowers off the board. No, and
you guys are
from
pals
this team
at the Senior
What'd
Bowl.
You say?
You guys are pals on television.
No,
at
we
Senior
are.
Bowl.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. We're going in on a timeshare together. It's fine. We're just best buds. Look, I love getting him at 15. I think he was the best pass rusher in this draft, one of the best defensive players in this draft, and I think getting him at 15 is excellent value. It's going to be an excellent spot for him. I think he's really going to produce on a defense that needs that consistent presence in the backfield. So love the Latu pick. Obviously love the A.D. Mitchell pick. He's 22 on my board overall. He goes 52. He goes 30 spots lower. So to be able to get him, now you form an offensive trio of A.D. Mitchell, Michael Pittman Jr., Josh Downs. Like, that's sick. Like, you did such a great job prioritizing what you needed to. You did not let the fact that you wanted to get better at that second wide receiver spot. You did not let that get in the way of drafting a player of Latu's caliber in the first round, which I commend them for. And then obviously they were able to navigate things, be patient, and grab A.D. Mitchell. So I think this is an A- for me because I also look at the Matt Gonzalez pick, and I like Matt Gonzalez a decent amount. I've said throughout the process, he feels like that offensive lineman where he's a little bit light in the pants. You know, he needs a little bit more weight
sand
in his lower
the pants.
Half to be able to anchor. Right. He needs more sand in the pants there. I think he needs to get a little bit stronger, but he does. I think he's pretty technically sound, and he feels like that offensive lineman that you just look back at and you go, man, how did we miss on him? Because I agree. I felt like he was going to get picked somewhere on day 3, and he felt like that day 3 offensive lineman that we look back on and we just go like, well, just steady, technically sound offensive lineman that became a starter in the NFL. So they drafted him a little bit earlier than I thought they were going to. But, Connor, when I look at the offensive tackles that were left on the board, after Gonzalez got picked, Javon Foster, Giovanni Manu, Christian Jones, Walter Rouse,
it goes quick,
Tylen Grable, Travis Glover, like there weren't really offensive tackles there that you could have said, yeah, it's a little early for Gonzalez. I think they looked at it and said, we need one of these offensive tackles that's left that maybe gives us starting potential that we're comfortable with. So with that context, I don't necessarily hate it given the offensive tackles that went on a run right before they got to that pick. I like Tanner Bortolini. I don't mind their day 3 guys, but Anthony Gould's definitely a specialist. I think Jalen Simpson's a specialist. You mentioned Carlisle. I'm excited to see how they use him, but I gave this an A- because of what they did at the very top, and I don't mind the Gonzalez pick nearly as much. What about the Jacksonville Jaguars? What did you think of the Jags?
All right, so people probably noticed I said I thought the Colts had the best draft in this division. I gave them a B. Jacksonville, I gave a C+, and I thought they had the second best draft in this division. I love Brian Thomas Jr. Like, getting him at 23, the trade. I can't wait to watch this offense get more vertical with Trevor Lawrence now. I'm genuinely excited to see Jacksonville's offense this year, especially through the air. Mason Smith at 48. Like, it's as simple as this, guys. You're either buying in that Mason Smith becomes what he was always supposed to be, which is a superstar defensive lineman. All the mock drafts from the preseason had him in the first round. I just didn't see him take any steps this year at all. He's a total project player that went 48th overall. And I knew me having him, I'll get the exact thing here because this is one I should definitely read. 123 was low. Like, I knew he's going earlier than 123. I had a feeling he could go in the top 100.
Yeah,
top 50.
I had him 140. So
at 48, it's wild. And we'll see if Trent Baalke's right. Jerry Jones, we really liked. I thought he was one of the most underrated slots in this draft. Really smart player, good instincts. They take him at 96. It's fine. Javon Foster, swing tackle. Jordan Jefferson, I didn't see anything from Jordan Jefferson. They clearly liked the LSU defensive lineman in a way that I didn't view them that way at all. So we'll see how that plays out. DeAndre Prince, Keelan Robinson were the round 5 picks. Keelan Robinson's just been buried behind great running backs, so I'm kind of curious to see what he could do as a third down pass catching back with some wiggle. And then they took Cam Little and Miles Cole in round 6 and 7. So not really any notable day 3, not a single notable day 3 pick in my opinion. I like Brian Thomas Jr. a lot. He saved this draft grade from being much worse, to be completely honest with you.
I also gave it a C+. Like the Brian Thomas Jr. pick, obviously, and I love the fact that they were not afraid to trade down from 17 to 23 to get it done. So I kind of factor that in a little bit here, where we'll talk about the Los Angeles Rams and how their grade's a little bit lower than maybe the players that they drafted should be, just because of how they navigated getting up to get those players. Which, look, I understand making a bet, but we'll get into that when we get to the Rams. I give the Jags a C+ because I like Brian Thomas Jr. I like the maneuver there. Mason Smith, massive overdraft to me, but you put it perfectly. You either believe in this guy or not, and he's very polarizing for a reason. The Jerry Jones pick, I agree with you. We like Jerry Jones. I like Jerry Jones as well, but for this team specifically, it's interesting because Jerry Jones struggled as an outside corner, and he really succeeded when he was a nickel corner. The Jags have Darnell Savage, who could play in the nickel, and they have Antonio Johnson, who could play in the nickel. And so when you look at Jones, the Jags, CB was obviously a need that we had on the need column, but it was more of outside corner that I feel like the Jags needed.
I thought they were going to take Quinyon Mitchell at 17.
Oh, it's 17. Yeah. Well, I wondered if that was going to be the case as well. Well, shoot, I actually thought they were going to take, because no, they could have taken Quinyon at 17, and then they also could have taken Terran Arnold at 23.
Exactly.
And I thought they were going to take one of those guys, because even if you look at the Jerry Jones selection, the outside corners that were picked after Jerry Jones, you got Kyrie Jackson, you got DeCamerion Richardson, you got TJ Tampa, you got Nehemiah Pritchett, you got Cam Hart, Chris Abrams-Drain, Jarvis Brownlee Jr. These are a lot of players who I think would have actually fit the need that the Jags had in the secondary more than Jerry Jones. So I like the player. I don't want to hit on it too hard, but just to give you guys some context there, I like their early day 3 picks. I like their round 4 picks. Javon Foster and all his experience, I think he can come in if you ever need him to right away, and the lights aren't going to be too bright for him because he's had so much experience in the SEC starting over the last 3 years. I do like the Jordan Jefferson pick as well from LSU. LSU jokes aside.
One.
What'd you say?
I didn't like that. I just never saw it with him. I had him at 225.
Oh man, I really like him as a run defender.
Okay,
I do. I really do like him as a run defender. I think he's a stout, pound for pound, pretty strong dude. So I like that in the 4th round. But yeah, C+ draft for me here for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Also, if FanDuel wasn't cowards and let me bet on the team that was going to draft Miles Cole before the draft, I would have put my entire retirement on him going to Trent Baalke and the Jacksonville Jaguars. I would have put every cent of my 401k on that happening.
Literally 7th round Trayvon Walker. 7th
Correct.
round. Hey, if Trayvon Walker was actually a 7th rounder, this is who he would be. If Trayvon Walker was not very productive for 5 years instead of 2, this is who he would be. Man, I texted you after I watched Miles Cole, and I said, I think he's going to be the worst player I watched. And to be fair to Miles Cole, because that was a little earlier in the process, he was not at all. He ended up being my 201st player. So they actually got some value.
I had him 185, so they got good value
got some
for
value
me as well.
In Miles Cole. All right, want to move over to the Titans or Texans?
Let's do the Titans first. What did you think of the Titans?
All right, I apologize, Titan fans. I'm sorry. Don't hate me, please. Be nice, or don't. It's fine. I have the skin for it. I gave him a C-.
Oh God, I thought you were gonna give him like an F.
No,
Jeez.
no, I didn't think any team like just bombed this draft. By the way, and I'll tell you when I think a team did. I really didn't see that. All right, so J.C. Latham at 7. I still don't know if Latham's a tackle, and the Callahans know a hell of a lot more about offensive line than me, where it makes you think like, okay, I should trust them with this. I prefer Latham at guard. Maybe he'll be a fine tackle. I still worry about the penalties. I still worry about people crossing his face when he's on an island in pass pro. I think he'll be an awesome run blocker for them. He's not the tackle I would have taken 7th. They obviously weren't going to, they didn't move because they probably thought they were going to lose out on him. Whatever it may be. This isn't like an egregious pick. It's not. I had Latham with a first round grade. This is not an egregious pick. It's just one that I like some other guys better. This is where it just starts to get like totally wild to me. T'Vondre Sweat at 38, who once upon a time I really liked, and then he just completely bombed his draft process. I mean,
I think they panicked because they didn't have a 3rd round pick.
I had him 80th at the end of this because if you just bomb the process like that, it's really hard to trust you in the NFL.
Yeah, I think I had him 120th,
and they took him in the top 40. Right. So, like, if this is like, why not just take Chris Jenkins, right?
Right. Chris Jenkins isn't 360 pounds, right?
Which is probably going to keep him playing longer than T'Vondre Sweat, who's not 360 pounds either when he plays.
Yeah.
He didn't even weigh into the Senior Bowl. No 3rd rounder. I wasn't that high on Cedric Gray. I think he could run sideline to sideline. I think he gets washed out when things are in between the tackles all the time. Jarvis Brownlee Jr., he plays a lot bigger than his size. I really like, he's just one of those players you really respect because of how physical he is at his size. But I'm curious how that's going to translate. But I have no problem with him in round 5. That's right where I had him. Jaquan Jackson, dart throw, deep threat. I think he's a deep threat from the slot only. James Williams, I really like. I think he's going to make it as a linebacker, converting from safety at pick 242. And then Jalen Harrell, who's a rotational pass rusher. Once again, a player, though, I actually I like their 7th rounders better than anything else they did in this draft. Not even joking. I am not joking. I loved their 7th round more than anything else they did in this draft. I gave him a C-. I think, obviously, Bill Callahan should be able to be fine with J.C. Latham. That's not my concern here. It felt like this is like really harsh. From round 2 to 6, I really didn't understand much of it.
Yeah, I ended up with a C- here for this team. I was debating between that and giving them a D+, just because I feel like I'm higher on Latham than other people out there who have a lot of doubts for him, and I think he could be a really good offensive tackle still at the NFL level. But even then, there were other offensive tackles that I had graded ahead of him, right? Olufashinu, Talise Fuanga, even Troy Fautanu, Olufashinu, right? Like these, I think I said Fashinu twice, but you guys know what I mean. I had other offensive tackles. Even though I like Latham was a top 20 player for me. I think he's going to be a starter at the NFL level. There were other offensive tackles that I even had higher than him. So that pick I even have to look at with a little bit of, maybe would have gone a different direction here. T'Vondre Sweat, they picked 90-ish spots ahead of where I had him on the big board, and I think it was a big-time reach. Now, the uniqueness of him is why you draft him there, and I think they felt as though not having a 3rd-round pick, they were going to miss out on all the good interior defensive tackles that they wanted, because if you take T'Vondre Sweat off of this depth chart, it's Jeffrey Simmons, it's Sebastian Joseph Day, and that's it. So I get why they prioritize defensive tackle, and I get why they saw the uniqueness of T'Vondre Sweat. I mean, if these two guys end up being long-term starters for them, then like this is a really good tone-setting draft for the Titans. I just have more worries with this team, and it's hard for me to have a lot of faith in it. Cedric Gray, I agree with you. He's fine, but I think he was overdrafted a little bit there at 106. Jarvis Brownlee Jr. I like, so like that is one of the picks that I really like from this team, and I think that in the 5th round it's a really good value. He might even be able to become a starter for you someday, but it's a 5th round pick. I like what they did in the 7th round, but again, it's a 7th round pick. So C- here for me for the Tennessee Titans when when I was flirting with the D+, but we'll see, man. This one is the one that could really be thrown in my face because J.C. Latham could turn out to be an absolute stud. I mean, if they flip him to the left side of the line of scrimmage, Connor, you got J.C. Latham and you got Peter Skoronski on that left side of the line. I mean, that's Bash Brothers shit, man. I mean, like, if they're ever asked to, like, combo block somebody, that person's just going to probably quit for that day and be like, all right, I'm done, actually. I'm hitting the showers. I'm going home. So I could see a world where this works out for the Titans. This is just a draft where I am kind of skeptical of the return on investment versus other players that they could have drafted at these positions. So C- for me.
That last line is the perfect way to put it. Like, unnecessary risk is what I would call it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And like you said, maybe it'll blow up in our face. We'll see how it goes to the Titans. The Texans.
Your draft grades never blow up in your face.
No,
nobody ever remembers
100%
draft grades
correct.
and calls you out.
Yeah, no misses ever.
We're making this episode private, like on Wednesday, so people can never
unlisted.
So many people can never listen to it again. Houston Texans. Well, let's round out this division.
So I gave them a C. When I look at this draft from a bird's eye view now, I hate what they did trading with the Vikings out of the first round. Like, I get it. They have a second rounder next year because of it. I would have just stayed in the first round and gotten a really, really good player. And instead, they moved out of the first round. They take Kamari Lassiter at 42. Lassiter is a hell of a competitor. He really is. I don't know if he has the speed at corner for the next level. It's going to be a huge question mark, and I'm kind of fascinated to see how that works out. Blake Fisher at 59. Fisher is somebody that when I wrote him up, there was a lot to like about him, and I thought he could go earlier than, ultimately where he did because he's an athletic tackle with heavy hands. I think there's a lot of times where when he's blocking, like his lower half just totally hits the pause button and like he stops working in sync, and that's how he got beat in pass pro a lot at right tackle. But when his hands land, he's a killer. So he just needs a lot of technique work in pass protection, and we'll see how the Texans, what they can get out of him. Kalen Bullock at 78. I'm just not taking a safety in the first 3 rounds that doesn't tackle. Like, it's just rule of thumb. The ball skills are pretty good. He definitely has some gambling moments, but he's got range, center fielder range. It's just not my type of safety in the top 100. Cade Stover at 123. Okay, hard-nosed player. Like, this makes a ton of sense.
Yep.
And then you have Jamal Hill, Jawar Jordan. They get some depth in their backfield. Solomon Byrd, Marcus Harris, Ladarius Henderson round out the 7th round. I didn't see a player here, Trevor, that is making much of an impact this year. And it's not outside of Blake Fisher. I don't think any of these guys have some ceiling. So you're not getting really instant impact. And one guy has a ceiling that excites me. I just full transparency. Like, when you factor in that they voluntarily moved out of round 1 for an extra future 2, that move, I don't like it at all. I'll just be totally honest.
I don't like it either. It's hard to look at what the Houston Texans did, in my opinion, with trading with the Vikings in hindsight and now say, like, yeah, that was a good move. Because you gave up higher draft capital in a draft class that is good, and gave it up for future draft capital. Now, like, they had two second-round picks next year, and they traded one of them for Stephon Diggs, so that gave you the flexibility to be able to go do that. Maybe that was in the plan all along. Maybe you were planning on trading for Stephon Diggs or T. Higgins or Brandon Ayuk or whatever it was. So I recognize what they're doing, and obviously that team looks great with another stud wide receiver on the team, but it's tough to then now look at this draft class and say, like, wow, they really came away with the guys that they really wanted here. Because I would have been fine with them not making the deal with the Vikings and just trading their own second round pick for one of those wide receivers. So, like, that to me would have been fine, and you would have stayed at 23 and probably gotten a higher impact player. I mean, for goodness sake, if you're talking about drafting a corner as your first selection here, Terran Arnold was there at 23. Now, I don't want to do too much hindsight, but it's
that
hard
matters
to
a lot.
That
big
first round pick,
difference.
right? And that first round pick wasn't something that you could have really used. I think this is a B- draft. I don't hate it. I do factor in the fact that I wish they would have now stayed in the first round. I think Kamari Lassiter could be a starting corner for them. You look at their corner room right now. It's big risk guys outside of Lassiter. It's CJ Henderson. It's Jeff Okudah, right? There's a world where those guys don't work out and you need an outside corner, and Kamari Lassiter can be that for you. So I think that there's a path to him playing and starting. Kalen Bullock could potentially be the best free safety on this team. I don't think it's going to happen next year because he's got to get a lot stronger. He's got to put on some weight. He's got to be a better tackler, but he could be an impact free safety for you. I see that world. Cade Stover, I like in this tight end rotation. He could be tight end 2 for this team. I think that Blake Fisher could absolutely become a starting offensive tackle someday. So I give it a B- just because I don't love how they navigated getting out of the first round, but I do see some starting potential for these guys, even if there's risk for them. I do see what they were going for with it, and I don't hate it. So I'm going to give this one a B-. I could have very well given them a B, but like that's kind of where I'm at with the Houston Texans. Last division in the AFC. Let's go to the Kansas City Chiefs. What did you give the Kansas City Chiefs with their draft grade? Do you think they got closer to that three-peat here after this weekend?
I gave them a B. Now, I'll start this by saying we're not factoring this in. I saw they signed Fabian Levette as a UDFA. That's awesome for their run defense. I think he makes the team. They need to get younger in the interior. Okay, so a lot of chalk here. Like Xavier Worthy, this is the best landing spot for him. I had him closer to about 41, 42. But like when you factor in how Andy Reid will use him, okay, Kingsley Suamataia, this is right around where I had him. The developmental tackle, he needs some work with his hands and is, angling his body, playing a little wider. But you got him at 63. Like this is where guys with that size and athleticism go. No third rounder. Really like their fourth round. Jared Wiley, starting wide tight end. Jaden Hicks, starting safety. Hicks is so aggressive and great instincts with everything in front of him. They don't need him to be this big cover over the top guy, so another great landing spot situation. Hunter Norzad, I evaluated as a fringe starting center in my top 120. They got him at 159. Good depth there for the interior of their defensive line. Kamal Hadden, I was super high on him compared to consensus. I had him in my top 140. They got him at 211. Big corner, ball skills, can turn and run, good burst. I think if he's your first corner off the bench with an injury, like, I think he's going to be okay. Then they get C.J. Hansen, more interior offensive line depth as well. So I gave the Chiefs a B. It's not like they did anything extraordinary, but when you win the Super Bowl every year with Pat Mahomes, you don't have to go outside the box. They address depth, they got some impact, and they got guys that simply fit a system that is a well-oiled machine.
This is an A draft to me. A. I'm giving the Kansas City Chiefs an A draft. One, they traded up with the Buffalo Bills, which is...
I should have factored that in.
To go. Why? I mean, you can't.
What are they saying? Are they
too much?
Are they lying who it is to Brandon Beane?
That's right, dude. I was talking to people after the draft, and they're like, "You can't ask them who they're drafting." The hell you can. This team kept you out of the Super Bowl over the last 3 years. If I'm Brandon Beane, I'm like, "Who are you taking?" And if Brett Veach says, "I'm not telling you that," piss off. I'm hanging up the phone.
Yeah.
Like, what? People are like, "I don't know if you could do that." What do you mean? I can do whatever I want.
It's my pick. It's my pick. I own it.
So, and then you're like, oh, so well, they would have traded up with somebody anyways. They would have traded up with your spot. Anyways, I like the fact that they go and get Xavier Worthy. They want to get more explosive. Obviously, they signed Marquise Brown to be able to do that. They were missing that element of their offense last year that just was not reliable. They're hoping to get way more explosive in their deep passing game next year with Mahomes and everybody there. So, love this pick there. Look, Kingsley Suamataia, we talked about the inconsistencies that he has, but you don't have to start him right away. Like, you can draft and develop him, and I like the Chiefs as a spot to be able to do that, so I like that pick at 63. This was a round where I thought he should have gone. People talked about him going in the first round. That was way too rich for me. I always felt like he was more of a nice developmental day 2 guy with a high ceiling. This is perfect. Jared Wiley, love this pick because it gives them depth at the tight end spot, but it also gives them long-term flexibility. You don't know how much longer Travis Kelce is going to play. Noah Gray is on the last year of his contract. So, and I think what they have, Irv Smith Jr., right? I think is the other tight end. Yeah. And Irv Smith Jr. is just on a 1-year deal too. So long term, this is a really good move because you're getting a rookie contract tight end that you could believe in, that you could kind of build that around. Jaden Hicks, same thing. Really good safety. You're missing Mike Edwards because Mike Edwards isn't on the team. He left in free agency. Justin Reed's on the last year of his deal as a strong safety there. Jaden Hicks can be that third safety this year, starting strong safety next year on a rookie contract. Hunter Norzad automatically, in my opinion, becomes one of the best versatile interior offensive linemen, backup interior offensive linemen in the NFL for a unit that is one of the best and strongest interior offensive lines, guard, center, guard. You now have a backup that can start in and actually be great for you in any situation. And the Kamal Hadden bet, I love it. I love this bet in the secondary. You lose L'Jarius Sneed. You still got some young guys that you like. Throw in another super talented player. See what he can become for you. So to me, A draft for the Chiefs. Love the context of all of these picks. Love the impact for them. This is an A draft for me. What about the Los Angeles Chargers?
Yeah, okay, so the Chargers, I just want to say the last thing. The Chiefs really understand fitting players into what they do as well as anybody in the NFL, and they deserve a lot of credit for that. The Los Angeles Chargers, I gave this draft an A, Trevor. Joe Alt,
let's go.
Top 5 player. They have arguably the best tackle duo in the NFL for a long time. Ladd McConkey, guy just simply knows how to get open. I love that they went wide receiver in round 2. Junior Colson, I had him as a top 40 player. They got him at 69. I think Jim Harbaugh knows how damn good Junior Colson is and how important he is for the middle of a defense. Leadership, speed, constantly wrecks plays. Justin Egboigbe, a strong kind of up and down the line of scrimmage defensive lineman. I think this was a little early, but it's not, egregious in any way. And then you have Tarheeb Still, athleticism at corner, Cam Hart, size at corner. I really like Cam Hart to win an outside corner job on this team. Kamani Vidal, I thought, was a really underrated running back in this draft. You get some burst there in the backfield to go with Gus Edwards. Brendan Rice and Cornelius Johnson, 2 mammoth wide receivers in the 7th round. Jump ball targets for Justin Herbert. So this is an A for the Chargers. I love how they're building this team. I love how it's breaking everyone's brain. Jim Harbaugh is going to have this team right real soon.
Look, man, we kind of talked about Chargers draft strategies here before the draft was underway, before this past weekend. This was always the path for them to have the best draft return, drafting an offensive lineman in the first round. That was always the way that it was supposed to go. I love Malik Neighbors. I love Rome Odunze. They're going to be phenomenal pros. They would have been phenomenal pros with the Los Angeles Chargers. But would you rather have the offensive linemen that were available outside of round 1 and one of those wide receivers? Or would you rather take the all-pro potential offensive lineman and getting Ladd McConkey and then having an opportunity to continue to draft and stack wide receivers in the years that follow? You would have rather had what they did. So I know Chargers fans are mad that they didn't come away with a incredible receiver in the first round, one of those top 3 wide receivers. I get it. I'm telling you, this was the best path for them, and they get an A for me because of that. The first 3 picks alone, I think, were home runs, but you continue the draft, like you said. Justin Egboigbe is perfect for what this defense wants to be. Cam Hart's a really good outside corner with his physicality and his athleticism. Kamani Vidal, I think, could be a rotational back with what they have almost immediately. And then you take 2 flyers on talented wide receivers like Brendan Rice and Cornelius Johnson. Cornelius Johnson, one that Jim Harbaugh knows pretty dang well to round out this class. This is an A for me, and to be honest, this was always the draft strategy that was going to yield the best results for the Chargers. So it's an A. What about the Las Vegas Raiders? What'd you think?
The Raiders, I gave a B+. Think they did a lot of really good things here. They got 2 of my favorite players in the draft in Brock Bowers and Jackson Powers-Johnson in the first 2 rounds, just fitting the identity of Antonio Pierce, becoming a downhill, punch you in the face, run through you football team. I don't know if they hit the wrong button with the Delmar Glaze pick in round 3. Maybe I view this a lot differently.
That was strange to me.
It's one of the strangest picks in the draft. It felt very Raiders of 7 years ago.
Yeah.
But they just did such a good job around the edges here. DeCamarion Richardson could be a starting outside corner with size and speed to me. Tommy Eichenberg, now goes to a defense that had Robert Spillane. The instincts master is Tommy Eichenberg. Always sees it so well. Dylan Lobby, obviously pass catching third down back with special teams ability, and then Trey Taylor and MJ Devonshire round this draft out. But it was a B+ because they got 2 really high impact players in rounds 1 and 2, and I think they got 2 potential starters with round 4 and 5. I don't know what happened there in round 3, but the draft was so good that it didn't even nuke their grade.
Yeah, I'm on the fence between a B and a B+. I ended up going with a B for this team just because I think that you cannot overlook how great it was, the fact that they got these 2 football players. Now, is there a reason Jackson Powers-Johnson fell to 44?
Right,
I guess we'll see, right? I mean, that's whether it's durability or whatever it is with Jackson Powers-Johnson, because he was top 30 player for me, no question about it. But and Brock Bowers, you're getting, it's a little weird because you drafted Michael Mayer, and I think Michael Mayer was going to be the full-time tight end for you, and I think he still is. There's a world where him and Brock Bowers and Devontae Adams can all exist. I'm not saying that that's impossible for this team, but it is a little strange. At the end of the day, though, you're getting my number 7 overall player at number 13. It's still good value there, and I think you're still getting a damn good, unique football player, so I don't want to be too hard on it. The Delmar Glaze pick I thought was a massive overdraft, and like everything, I hope he proves me incredibly wrong and becomes a Hall of Famer. But I felt as though that was a major overdraft. DeCamerion Richardson, I like. Not a lot of ball skills from him. 0 interceptions in his college career. Didn't really get his hands on the football. That's something that still needs to develop for him. So I think this team had a bigger cornerback need than addressing it at the top of the 4th round. So I don't kind of love how they navigated that. But it's hard to argue too much of the BPA approach that they went with both in the 1st and 2nd round, because these are guys that maybe they weren't even sure were going to be there for them. So they just had to pick them. And then you're just getting in a situation where, well, we're picking the best players that's there. We're making our football team better. We'll hit needs a little bit later in the draft. So didn't want to be too harsh on it, even though I thought the draft strategy was a little off. I like the Tommy Eichenberg pick. I think that could be really valuable for them. Looking at what is in their linebacker room right now, Eichenberg's a little bit different. He's a little bit more traditional between the tackles, can fit the run for you. So I feel as though he increases the floor of that defensive unit as if he is really in that linebacker rotation early. So ended up giving this a B for the Raiders. What's it? One more team. Who do we got?
Broncos. And I want you to start with this one.
So, okay, let me scroll up. Let me make sure that I've got all the.
They took Bo Nix at 12.
Yeah. I knew that one. So they take Bo Nix at 12. They get Jonah Ellis at 76. They get Troy Franklin at 102. Chris Abrams-Drain at 145. Audric Estime at number 147. Devon Vele at 235. And then Nick Garrulo, the interior offensive lineman from South Carolina, at 256 in the 7th round. Almost Mr. Irrelevant, right? Was the pick before?
Close. Yep.
Close. Very close. I gave this an A- draft. I did. No 2nd round pick. Don't move off of number 12. Don't get cute with it. Draft the quarterback. We got 5 quarterbacks off the board already. Look, they pigeonholed themselves into having to get a quarterback. I understand that.
Yeah.
But for the fact that they did, how they came out of this draft with a really good quarterback, a really good pass rusher, a really good wide receiver, to me, those are we nailed it kind of draft picks. So I gave the Broncos an A- here, and I know that might get people all riled up because of the Bo Nix pick itself. But at the end of the day, you got to pay a quarterback tax to go up and get these guys, and you already watched 5 of them go off the board. So you knew that there were other teams that maybe had QB needs that would have taken Bo Nix if you trade back to, who knows, somewhere in the 20s. Maybe he's not even there, because the gap between where Bo Nix was picked and where Spencer Rattler was picked was way bigger than I thought was going to be the case. So you had to come away with the quarterback. George Paton said this himself. We could have traded back and tried to still get Bo Nix, but we didn't want to get cute with it and miss out on the quarterback, which was the linchpin of their entire draft strategy. So they did what they had to do. They came away with a quarterback here. They didn't have to trade up to do it. I still think Nix is good. This was one of the top player team fits that I loved going into the draft. Nix being able to get with Sean Payton, so I like that connection there. Getting Jonah Ellis at 76, I think, was really good value. Getting Troy Franklin at 102 was really good value, not just for him as a player, but also because he was Nick's number 1 target at Oregon. So you factor that in as well. Chris Abrams-Drain had a really good year last year at Missouri. Ton of forced incompletions, a lot of interceptions, good ball skills from him there to play opposite Patrick Surtain. And then Audric Estime just brings up the beep and is obviously the people's champ of this draft here. So A- to me for the Denver Broncos.
I know this is gonna hurt you, and it pains me to say. I gave this draft a C+. And
oh, brother. You gotta explain this to me.
Okay, so I adore rounds 3 through 5. Like Jonah Ellis at 76, Troy Franklin at 102, Chris Abrams-Drain at 145, and Audric Estime at 147. Those are all values to me. I think you got a legit pass rusher, a deep threat wide receiver, a slot corner, and a number 2 power back.
You're a hater. It's fine.
I am. No, it's fine. I'm a certified hater.
You're a certified hater.
It is so hard for me, if I'm the Broncos, to go to war against Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert with Bo Nix. And it's nothing against Bo Nix as a player, because he's not a bad football player. He has a high floor. He sees pressure well. He understands how to be a point guard. I think it's just you're putting yourself swimming upstream in this division by taking a guy that, in my opinion, won't ever be a top 12 quarterback, 12th overall. Like, this is the guy now, where like is Sean Payton always just going to out scheme the Chiefs and Chargers enough, and this defense is tough enough that they'll overcome it? Because that's what they have to do now, in my opinion. This isn't how I would have made my bed. And I know a lot of people will not like what I'm saying, and I could be painfully wrong. But I didn't see like in this division, it sucks to be in it. And I think Antonio Pierce's quote from a couple months ago about like, you just got to package everything up sometimes and go get a quarterback. And the Raiders were in a situation where they just couldn't. Like, they were frozen out. The Falcons were always taking Penix at 8. There was no way to go get Jaden Daniels, who the Raiders loved. But like his quote kind of said what everybody's thinking with this division, that you need a dude, because good God, going against, because now Harbaugh is going to do everything to build it the right way around Herbert. Mahomes, there's nothing to be said about the Chiefs. I really like the middle of this draft, Trevor, but the crux of it is, does Denver have what it takes in the Sean Payton era to ever be more than the third best team in this division? My prediction is no. And we'll see if I'm wrong, but I will never pick the Broncos to finish first, or honestly even second, in my opinion, in this division with this infrastructure right now. And like, I get it. People are going to just disagree, and that's fine. But that's how I have viewed this draft that was such a turning point for the Sean Payton era that got off to a disastrous start from a relation standpoint. Right. And I get why Bo is his guy. I don't think Bo is going to be bad. I can't say it enough. I just don't see the ceiling that's needed.
I think we're just looking at it, I think, from two different sides of the coin, because I look at Denver's situation going into this weekend, and I think to myself, what could they have done better? And outside of trading a king's ransom to get into the top 10 for this quarterback war, which they could, that would have hurt the team long term anyways.
Right.
You talk about going up against the Chiefs and the Chargers, and that would have hurt the team long term anyways. The Bears were never moving off 1. The Commanders were never moving off 2. The Patriots were never moving off 3. The Falcons were always taking Michael Penix at 8. I mean, they could have traded up for McCarthy, but then at that point, how different is McCarthy from Bo Nix? I got McCarthy rated 28th on my board. I got Bo Nix rated 35. So you don't have to trade up. You don't have to move. You get to stick at 12. You get to keep the draft picks that you desperately need, and you pick a quarterback who I think fits really well in your system and allows you to not have to go out and start Jarrett Stidham. Gives you something to believe in. So I look at where Denver was, and the reason why it's an A- is because I don't know what they could have done better. I really don't. Outside of them trading down and getting multiple picks to trade down, and then risking, with 5 quarterbacks off the board already, not being able to get your guy. And think of the quarterback teams that could have been in between where they wanted. Maybe it's the Seahawks. Maybe it was the Saints. Maybe it was the Raiders, right? You got too many teams that were sitting right there that could have taken quarterbacks. So, look, people are going to be hot and cold about Bo Nix, but the reason why this has to get an A- for me, at the very least, is because, 1, this is my favorite landing spot for him, and he absolutely goes here. 2, the Broncos didn't have to trade up and didn't have to give future draft capital that I think would have hurt them building this team, which they are clearly still building the rest of the roster. And 3, I just look at this quarterback run, and I don't know what else they possibly could have done to not have to trot out Jarrett Stidham to start in week 1 for this team, because it would have been a year that you just have to write off, and it would have been an absolute nightmare. And so all those things, I gotta give it an A-.
I think my final take on it is, like, and I know this is taboo to say, but fracturing the relationship with Russell Wilson, who's not great, but not bad. I just would rather go into this year, honestly, with, and they couldn't because of the relationship, but with Russell Wilson and Brock Bowers or Laiatu Latu. Like, that's how I look at it. I think this team would be a lot better with Russell Wilson and one of Brock Bowers or a pass rusher. And instead, they're just sitting on all that money, and they use the pick on Bo Nix.
Sure, I think this is a deeper discussion.
It is. This is off the rails of the draft, and we don't really have the time.
Right. We will. I think when we do our previews for teams, and I think we'll do some of that this summer, I think we'll really get into this more, and we'll have a much deeper conversation, because I think at that point, then you can bring it to hindsight. I look at, hey, the cards are on the table. This is the draft. This is what it is. Do I wish they would have handled things a little bit differently a year ago or 6 months ago? Sure. But this is where you're currently at, and for where you currently put yourself, how you pigeonholed yourself so hard with the quarterback room going into this draft and not having draft picks and not having a good quarterback outside of Stidham, like I don't really know how they could have done this any better. So A- for me for the Denver Broncos. Let's switch over to the NFC East. Let's switch over to the other conference. Dallas Cowboys. What'd you think of Dallas Cowboys?
Very, once again, what I call meat and potatoes draft. I gave this a C+ for the Cowboys, kind of on the fringe of a B-. They didn't do anything like egregious or just outright wrong. Guyton, I think, is a really good developmental tackle. That he needs work on his hand placement and he needs seasoning, but this is where Guyton, because of his size and movement skills, deserve to go. Marshawn Nealon, he's a power rusher to me, and I'm always fascinated by how those guys adjust to everybody being strong at the next level.
I agree.
I thought this was a little early. I like Cooper Beebe. I think he's a starter at guard. Maybe they look at him at center. It's going to be really interesting how they use him. Maris Liafu, nose is always around the ball. Little early in this spot, but gives them some help in the middle of the field. Kalen Carson, I like the value there. Depth corner piece. Ryan Flournoy, size, speed, older wide receiver prospect. Nathan Thomas is going to be a much better guard than he was tackle at the college level. Justin Rogers, a beefy interior defensive lineman. So the Cowboys, in my opinion, are really a win now team, and I don't really think they had a draft that gave them a big shot in the arm, but I think it helps them for the long term in the trenches.
I went with a B because I can see a lot of these things working out, but it was between a B- and a B for me. The Tyler Guyton pick is very interesting because he's somebody that if you need him to start right away, I think you're in trouble, right? If you're asking if you're asking a guy who played right tackle his 1 year of starting at Oklahoma, now you're flipping him over to the left side of the line of scrimmage where he played a couple of snaps but not a ton. Now he's starting at left full time for the first time in the NFL. Already has some bad technique and bad consistency there. If you need him to start at left tackle right away, that might be tough for you. Like that you might take your lumps there with him at left tackle. Cooper Beebe, shocker to everybody out there, I liked this pick here because obviously it's versatile beef in the middle, which I think helps because it only makes you more flexible with Tyler Smith and what you need to do here. I mean, maybe there's a reality because Terrence Steele didn't play great at right tackle, so maybe there's a reality where you still move Tyler Smith out to left tackle. You could play Cooper Beebe at left guard, and now you can play Tyler Guyton to right tackle. And I think that flexibility really helps them out. So I actually did like this pick. Nealon, yeah, we'll see how him as a power rusher can convert to the NFL. Maris Liafu, you guys know I like him as a linebacker. This was sort of around the range where I thought he could have gone, especially with the Cowboys not having a 4th-round pick, but could have gone with a wide receiver here. Like I looked at the wide receivers that I would have much rather had instead of a linebacker here for them. Jermaine Burton, Roman Wilson, Jalen McMillan, Troy Franklin, Javon Baker, Tez
great
Walker.
point.
Like they're all still on the board.
It's a great point.
And so that's why I think this draft is a B for me. I do like Nathan Thomas. I do like Justin Rogers, but this is a heavy trench draft. I like Kalen Carson as well, but that's kind of where I wish they would have gone wide receiver there because then I could have leaned more towards a B+ for this team where I'm in between B- and B, but I'll go with a B for the Dallas Cowboys because I do think they needed a shot in the arm in their offensive line, and they very clearly prioritized it. So I gave them a B here. What about the Philadelphia Eagles?
A for me for the Eagles. The Eagles just masterclass every year of value. Yep. Quinyon Mitchell, I thought they were going to have to move up to get him. I think they thought they were going to have to move up to get him. They get him at 22. They get Cooper DeJean. They got my top 2 corners in the top 40. And the way they're going to use DeJean is going to be electric. I mean, the secondary just got so much better after the first 2 rounds. Jalix Hunt, this is such a great landing spot for him. He doesn't have to come in and be Superman. The size, the length, the speed.
Did you see the Daniel Jeremiah thing?
No.
I think this is real. Although I guess I didn't 100% fact check it. Somebody had tweeted that Howie Roseman actually texted Daniel Jeremiah and was like, can you get them to take your big board off the screen during the broadcast? Because I want to draft Jalix Hunt and you have him on there. And he didn't want other teams to remember oh yeah, Jalix Hunt. We could draft him here. And I just saw this on Twitter. I guess I don't know how real this is, but I had seen this that Howie had texted DJ and he was like, can you get them to take your big board off the screen? Because I want to draft this guy.
Ruin the draft broadcast so I can get who I want. Unreal. Kind of believable. So this was a great landing spot for Jalix Hunt. Will Shipley, pass catching 3rd down back, right where I thought he should have went. fun fifth round, like Aeneas Smith, gadget wide receiver, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., legacy pick. Trevor Keegan, I thought, is a starting guard. They get him at 172. Johnny Wilson and Dylan McMahon, round 6. Like, why not? This is where closer to where I had Johnny Wilson than consensus. Dylan McMahon, he's undersized, but I really think he could play. And the Eagles do not give a shit about taking small centers because they've found a way to make it work. An A for the Eagles, a Howie masterclass.
A+. I'll one-up you.
I didn't have an A+, by the way.
No, that's fair. That's fair. Their A+ is kind of different stipulations for everybody. Sometimes people go, well, I can't give you an A+ unless you did a trade that was really good because you're factoring in that kind of draft maneuvering. But this is an A+
they did a couple of those.
Wait, what'd you say?
They did a couple great trades for future capital.
Right, they did. So, look, cornerback was the biggest need on this team. They come away with my CB1 and my CB2, both top 10 players that I had on my board at number 22 and number 40. I mean, it's just absolutely excellent right there. I love Jalix Hunt as a developmental edge rusher. They get him at 94. Beautiful. Will Shipley and Nia Smith, that allows them to have that flexibility too. You've got really good wide receiver / running back, kind of like hybrid players. Smith's a little bit more of that. Shipley's more of a traditional or more of a mainstay at running back. But to me, these are really good like kick return option guys with the new kick return rules. Right. Really see the line of scrimmage well, really good footwork, guys that can really take it to the house or just get you really good field position on the new kick return rules. Jeremiah Trotter Jr. in the 5th round, just excellent. Legacy alone, I just absolutely love it. Trevor Keegan,
what a cool moment.
Super cool moment, man. I mean, that's just the fact that his dad is a Philadelphia Eagle Hall of Famer, like franchise Hall of Famer. It's just awesome. You know, growing up, he was just such an Eagles fan because of everything that his dad was doing with the Philadelphia Eagles. So, man, it's beautiful.
Did you see the picture of them, like him holding him as a kid, borderline baby after, what was it, NFC Championship? There's a great picture of them, and it's like on the field. It's unbelievable.
I do. I love it. Trevor Keegan getting him at 172, I absolutely love. Johnny Wilson getting him at 185. That's 100 picks lower than where I had him on the big board. And then Dylan McMahon, you know, we talked about Dylan McMahon.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's got the size to be able to play at the NFL level, but hell, Eagles have done pretty well with smaller centers before.
Right.
They have a pretty good track record of it, so why not get this guy in the building because he's a good football player. He's just a little bit smaller. So truly needs navigation. Howie masterclass, A+ from the Philadelphia Eagles. What about the New York Giants? What do you think about the Giants here?
Another draft I loved. Great for Joe Shane and the Giants. Malik Neighbor is going to be a superstar. Tyler Nubin, starting safety that could play any role you want him to in the 2nd round. Andrew Phillips, I wasn't like, a lot of people really like Andrew Phillips. I thought he's fine. I think he matches movements really well. He's not a game-changing corner that takes away the ball. But you know what? He could be a starter and a number 2, and he could develop into. So it was fine. Theo Johnson at 107. That's right where I valued him. Let's see if we can get a little bit more pass game production out of him than Penn State did. Tyrone Tracy, that's my guy, 166. I think he's going to be the Giants.
Yeah, baby.
I think he's going to be the best running back on the Giants by November. I mean,
yes.
Like yeah.
The value of that pick is so good for this team because look at the rest of the running back room. It's Devin Singletary. It's Eric Gray.
Do not forget Gary Brightwell.
What'd you say?
I said, do not forget Gary Brightwell.
I mentioned Gary Brightwell. I said him. Deion Jackson, like, legitimately, Tyrone Tracy could be RB1 for this team in the first half of the season. Yeah, like, man. Singletary, they're gonna lean on him because he's a vet and Brian Daboll knows him. But Devin Singletary's not getting the lion's share of the carries.
No.
Tyrone Tracy could easily be in that mix as a rookie. So I agree with you. What'd you give him? What was the
A-?
Yeah.
I mean, dude, like just a great draft for the Giants. And I know everybody's like, well, they didn't get a quarterback. Like, listen, they made their bed with the Daniel Jones situation. You got to ride it out one more year. I'm glad they didn't go, well, we have to take a quarterback. We have to take J.J. McCarthy at 6. Right. Like, no, if Jones stinks this year, or even if he's just not good, a young quarterback or a different quarterback is now walking into an actual football roster. That's what they did.
A- draft for me. I have the same exact grade, and the only reason why that minus part is in there is because they just didn't address quarterback. But again, given full context, I love what they did. They tried to get up to number 3. They tried to go get Drake May, which to me was the guy to go up and get. So I'm not dropping this any lower because they didn't address the quarterback position. I'm just changing it from like an A to an A minus because you do have to think about that reality. But Malik Neighbors, immediately wide receiver 1 on this team. You lose out on Xavier McKinney in free agency, you bring in Tyler Nubin. Love it. Andrew Phillips, to me, a perfect complement to what Deion Banks is on the other side of the line of scrimmage. Now you have 2 fierce, competitive, press man coverage corners that you can get super aggressive with on the outsides. I love the pairing. The styles are very similar. I think these guys are going to go great as a 1-2, and I think that the Giants are now really streamlining what they're able to do and how aggressive they want to be in their secondary. So I love the Andrew Phillips fit here. This was right around where I had him. I think I had him like 64 overall on my big board. They get him at 70, so this is good value for me as well. Theo Johnson makes sense because he can be a vertical threat for you as a really good athlete. Whenever you want to push the ball down the field, and you know they're going to do that more because they have Malik Neighbors on the team. Tyrone Tracy, I mentioned I could see a role for him to produce very early on. And Darius Muasau, the linebacker, look, probably a special teamer, but I watched him at the Shrine Bowl. This dude just wants to be physical. This dude just wants to hit. Good depth linebacker, good special teams player. Giants, A-minus draft for me. Last one's the Washington Commanders here in this division. What'd you think of Washington?
B+ for Washington. What a wild ride this draft was. Like, full transparency, everybody listens to this knows this by now. I would have taken Drake May instead of Jaden Daniels at 2. We'll kind of see how it all plays out. But Johnny Newton at 36 and Mikey Sanderstill at 50.
Elite.
Like, home run. I cannot believe, and we'll get to Rukaroro at 35, Johnny Newton went after him. So Johnny Newton at 36, Mikey Sanders still at 50, slam dunk. Brandon Coleman a little earlier than I would have liked, but if you watch the highs of Brandon Coleman, you get it, and they needed offensive line help. Luke McCaffrey, interesting developmental big slot, catches everything. Love Jordan McGee, starting linebacker with juice at 139. Dominique Hampton, interesting athlete at safety. Javonte Jean-Baptiste, I mean, this is what he went in the 7th round. He needs to get a lot stronger, but once again, interesting athlete on the edge. I'm not going to sit here and tell you, like, I think Jaden Daniels is going to be a home run. I like his floor, but I don't. It's going to be fascinating to see how that all plays out in that offense. I thought they crushed round 2. Definitely a B+.
I'm also giving it a B+ here. Look, you go draft the quarterback at number 2. I would have taken Drake May very clearly, so that factors into like who I would have gone with here. I'm not just going, oh yeah, they drafted a quarterback, we're good to go.
No,
I have Drake May as my number 3 overall player. I have Jaden Daniels as my number 21. That's a steep gap for
almost same for me.
Right,
yeah, 6 and 21 for me.
What really saved this draft from being just a B or giving it that B+ is the fact that you get 2 incredible football players in round 2 in Jerzon Newton and Mike Sainristil. I like Ben Sinnott. I think he's going to be a productive, versatile pro.
Forgot to mention him.
What'd you say?
I forgot to mention Ben Sinnott. Good call.
53 though, early for me.
Same.
Pretty dang early for me, especially for where the tight ends got drafted afterwards. So I would have gone a different direction there. I like the Brandon Coleman selection, but even if you if you flip it a little bit, I think it looks a little bit easier. So you're getting good football players. But again, the Senate pick I think could be useful for them. I just think it's a little bit of an overdraft. I like Luke McCaffrey. I like Jordan McGee. Dominic Hampton's very interesting as a bigger safety / linebacker. And then I like Javonte Jean-Baptiste as well, who was in my top 20 edge rushers. So getting him in the 7th round I think was really nice. So B+ draft for me for Washington here. Let's go to the NFC North. Let's start with the Packers, the team that we labored over so much when it came to the mock draft exercises. When it's all said and done now, what'd you think of the Green Bay Packers draft?
I gave them a B. The Packers are going to do weird things, and they're going to do good things. Jordan Morgan, I mean, I have no problem with it. Okay, so let me scale that back. I would have taken Graham Barton, like full transparency. Yep. Morgan is not a bad player, so I'm not going to sit here and kill the pick. I'm absolutely taking Graham Barton over him, so I didn't love that decision as much as Morgan will be fine. He'll be a fine player on the offensive line. I love Edgerrin Cooper. Javon Bullard is solid at safety. I thought they did well in round 2. Not great, but well. Marshawn Lloyd is the perfect complement to Josh Jacobs, in my opinion.
I agree.
Then they just take Tyron Hopper at 91. And this is just what Green Bay does. Like, you just look around and you're like, wait, what? It's like the Delmar Glaze situation. Like, did they press the wrong button? Did they send the wrong fax? It's not that Hopper's not a football player. It's just that 91 when you just took Edgerrin Cooper and you have linebackers. They just do such weird things. Evan Williams is a good tackler. 111 was a little early for me. Jacob Monk's an interesting interior offensive lineman because of the smarts and the movement skills. Keaton Oladapo, I liked better than Evan Williams. They take him at 169. I think he does some of the same things. He just does them better. Travis Glover, very interesting tackle that I liked a lot for what he was in round 6. It's a B. They do really good things, and then in between, they just do like things where you're like, where did they come up with that? So
yeah, I gave this a B for the Packers as well. Would have rather had Graham Barton at number 25, but Tampa Bay Buccaneer legend Graham Barton, so I can't dare take that reality away from them. I think that you're viewing Barton more. The reason why you go with Morgan is probably because they believe he actually has that tackle versatility to him, whereas Barton they probably viewed as just an interior offensive lineman. This is very clearly a team that loves these guys that can play both guard and tackle. Morgan, we figured that the NFL would like his chances at tackle more than Barton, so I guess that's where they're coming from. I don't want to be too harsh on it. Still like Jordan Morgan, even though I would have gone with Graham Barton there. Cooper, great pick. Javon Bullard, great pick. Nasty secondary now. But yeah, Marshawn Lloyd, I agree with you. Really good compliment. Tyron Hopper, I don't even necessarily hate the Tyron Hopper pick because when you look at the linebackers that were taken after him, if you take Peyton Wilson off the board because of injury, right? Maybe he just wasn't on the Packers board at all whatsoever. Cedric Gray, Tyrese Knight, Jordan McGee, Jeremiah Trotter, Olafashio. Like, these are all guys that could have been options for you, but it's not like these major, like, home run players. You could throw Tyron Hopper into that mix if you wanted to, but to me, you didn't have to take him at 91 is the thing. You drafted 2 safeties after that, and Dadrion Taylor-Demerson was still available. Cam Kinchens was still available at safety that you could have taken these guys. Shoot, maybe even Malik Mustafa if you liked him for more of that heavy-hitting safety. So I just feel as though the priority, you get Jacob Monk in there at 163. There are other offensive linemen I would have taken. So this one gets a B for me. I see what they were doing. It just, to me, it could have been a little bit better starting with that Tyron Hopper pick. Now that he's on the team, I see they wanted athletic bodies at linebacker. But
they're so weird.
Would have prioritized this a little bit different, but you're right. The Packers kind of just march by the beat of their own drum, and it's worked out for them. So we'll see.
Right. To be fair, a lot of times it works for them.
So you gave him a B. I gave him a B.
Yep.
Okay. What about the Minnesota Vikings? Let's talk about the Vikings next.
I gave the Vikings a C. Listen, McCarthy at 10. This doesn't really matter now. I still think they wanted Penix, despite everybody else not thinking that. Whatever, it doesn't matter. McCarthy to me was a top of second. It just doesn't matter. Like, there's no point of arguing this. McCarthy was a top of second round quarterback for me. He was always going to go early. I think it's a great landing spot for JJ McCarthy. And if they can't get the most out of him, I don't think many others could. Dallas Turner's a really fun player, but this nuked the rest of their draft. No second round pick, no third round pick. Kyrie Jackson in the 4th round, size, speed, has never really fully put it together. Walter Rouse is an interesting tackle prospect in the 6th round. Will Reichard, they get a kicker here. Michael Juergens, Levi Drake Rodriguez round out the 7th round. So, Turner, they traded a lot to get Dallas Turner.
Yeah.
I'm not the biggest McCarthy guy, although I think O'Connell will do well with him. Never great. And they just had no draft, Trevor. Like, it's hard to get a great grade when you just really don't have much of a draft here.
Yeah, I'm scrolling up a little bit here.
And they really go buck wild when they make trades. It's like,
and so they give up to move up 5 spots, and they're going to get their guy, so I get it. But both Verse and Turner were still on the board, but maybe you just see Verse as way better anyways. They move up 5 spots from 23 to 17 to get Dallas Turner. They give up 176 or 167 in this year's draft and a 3rd rounder and a 4th rounder. So, like, that's in the future. I believe those are future picks there.
Yeah.
So
out of 4 and a 5 for the McCarthy trade, they gave the Jets a 4 and a 5.
So now you've traded up twice. And now when you look at next year's draft for the Vikings, they pick in the 1st round and then they pick in the 5th round. That's it.
After not having a draft really this year. They don't have a 2nd round pick next year. They don't have a 3rd round pick next year. They don't have a 4th round pick next year. Now you got 2 good football players, and I actually really like Kyrie Jackson as well at 108. I like Walter Rouse. Will Reichard is an experienced kicker from Alabama. I mean, it's a kicker. It is what it is. But I do like their players. What did you give this grade? A C.
No, see, I'm higher than that. I gave it. I still gave them a B because they came away with good football players. And I do really like Kyrie Jackson and Walter Rouse as well. So I think they can be contributing players. If it was different players there, I might feel a little bit different and move this down because they did have to get over aggressive to go get their guys. But at the end of the day, they did go get their guys. And I think that this, again, just like the Knicks pick, I'm probably a little bit higher on this than you are because, again, this is the ideal spot for J.J. McCarthy. The ideal spot.
Yeah, it's great for J.J. McCarthy.
So to land him, especially not having to trade up from 11 to 5 to do it, having that patience, having that intel in the rest of the league, you get a thumbs up from me there. Even though you had to trade up to get him or felt like you had to trade up to get him, you didn't have to give up 23 to do it. You didn't have to give up next year's first to do it. So good on them there, even though they spent a lot for Dallas Turner. Dallas Turner did have that crazy high athleticism that not a lot of other pass rushers in the draft really gave you that ceiling to go hit. So I gave this one a B for the Minnesota Vikings. I still think they got good players, even though they did give up a lot to get them on their team. I think they got better, but the Bills going to come due next draft when you pick in the first round, and then you don't pick till the 5th. So that's going to be interesting there. We'll talk about that later. Chicago Bears. I think this should be a pretty straightforward one, but how do you think Chicago did?
A-, even if they walk away with 2 players. I mean, Caleb Williams, it's going to be really, really good there. Rome Odunze, I love the pick at 9. You're so loaded on offense. In round 3, you take Kieran Amagaji, see if you could develop him at tackle. Torrey Taylor, okay, I don't know why you need to take a punter with the 122nd pick of the draft, but
maybe because he's got an absolute howitzer, Connor.
He does,
maybe because
but
he's punted for more yards than Iowa's offense is thrown for.
And he also loads up like a RPG. Like his load time to punt, I'm very curious to watch that. There's your punter scouting, folks.
That's analytics, folks.
Austin Booker at 144, pretty sweet pick. Like Booker probably should have went back to school in hindsight, but maybe now instead he develops on the fly at the NFL level. The Bears franchise changed today, and they didn't need to make any picks after the first 2 for that to happen, but I really like the Booker pick.
Give it an A. I got to give it an A for the Chicago Bears here. I had it as an A- with the Torrey Taylor pick because, again, punter at 121, no matter how much you like the punter, he's the punter in the 4th round. When you only have 4 picks in the draft.
Very odd.
But then, coming back up and getting Austin Booker, I think that kind of fix things, and I think that's a really good bet for him. I was wondering if Austin Booker was going to be a target for them at 75, and they get him at 144. So I think it's a really good job there by them, not staying quiet after that 4th pick in the 4th round. So this one is an A to me. Caleb Williams can change the franchise. Rome Odunze gives them one of the best trios, if not the best wide receiver trio in the NFL. Love Kieran Amagaji, who, by the way, grew up a Bears fan, which is really cool for him.
The tweets do not lie.
Yeah, there are some tweets a couple years ago of him just like being a diehard Bears fan. So I was very high on him anyway. So 75, that's good range for me for him to be a starting guard or tackle for them. So really like the Bears. This is an A draft for me. Last team in this division, the Detroit Lions. What'd you think?
B+, you get Terrion Arnold. I thought they really needed a corner. You somehow walk out of this draft with Arnold, who his DNA really fits what Dan Campbell's building. Ennis Rakestraw at 61. That's right where I had him. No round 3 pick. They did trade their 2025 third rounder to the Jets to come into round 4 for Giovanni Manu. Manu made my top 300 by a couple spots. This is like him at 126. They're like, oh, maybe we got like the next Mailata. There's just not a lot of people that big and strong that can move on the offensive line like Manu, but he needs a year, maybe 2. Sione Vaki, they announced his running back, Trevor. Very interesting.
Wait, did they really?
They did. They announced him as a running back. I like Vaki as a safety. I like Vaki as a football player.
I totally missed that detail.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with it. It could just been like a nice little touch for the home crowd, which, by the way, the crowd of Detroit, unbelievable energy throughout all 3 days.
You knew it would be.
They bring it.
Detroit's just some of the most diehard football fans in the world.
Makai Wingo at 189, Christian Mahogany at 210, killer round 6.
Yep.
Pass rushing defensive lineman, mauling guard, B+ for the Lions. Really nice work from top to bottom.
A- from me. I mean, and honestly, that could have been an A. I don't really know a lot about Giovanni Manu, so the reason why this isn't just a straight up A is because you're drafting a guy that I don't really know a lot about in the 4th round. Now he could turn out to, like you said, like be the next Jordan Mailata, and it'd be huge. But I give this one an A-. Love the fact that they got aggressive for Terrion Arnold while he was still on the board there in the first round. Moving up to go get him, major difference maker. You were in a winning window. Cornerback was a big need for you. You not only hit it there, which I absolutely love, you also hit it with Rakestraw Jr., who I think is a Lions type of corner, baby. Something that he does well. Sure, you got some long speed concerns with him. He's not the fastest dude in the world. Physical. He'll come up and tackle. And when you talk to every single defensive coach for the Detroit Lions, hey, what do you look for in certain players? The very first words that are going to come out of their mouth is tackling, toughness, competitiveness. That's what they want. That's what Dennis Rakestraw Jr. is. And I know that they brought in some veteran corners, so you go, man, loading up on corners, is that really redundant for them? It's really not. Carlton Davis is in the last year of his contract. Amik Robertson signed a 2-year deal, but he can get out of it after this year. Emmanuel Mosley only signed a 1-year deal, so he could be out next year. Genuinely, the starting cornerback room for the Detroit Lions in 2026, so just a year, or 2025, so just a year from now, could be Rakestraw Jr. on the outside as a second-year player, Terrion Arnold on the outside as a second-year player, Brian Branch on the inside as a third-year player. They could have just drafted their entire starting secondary. So, no, I don't see the redundancy here. Sione Vaki, love as a versatile football player. And then getting Mekhi Wingo and Christian Mahogany in the 6th round. Excellent there from the Detroit Lions. So, A- for them, for me. Let's go to the NFC South. All right, Atlanta Falcons. Let's do it. Let's just start with the Atlanta Falcons. What'd you give them?
I gave them a B-. I'm probably the only human on earth that did that.
Yeah, you're better than me.
I love Penix. It is very bizarre, everything that's gone on with it. I can't give it below a B- if I think Penix is a future franchise quarterback that moves the needle. Like, that's my thought process. Sure. Now, the asset management of this franchise is, and I flipped this from a C+ to a B- a couple of times, is very odd. Ruka Roro over Johnny Newton is a fireable offense. Braylon Trice at 74 is fine. I really like Brandon Dorlus at 109. You get a smart linebacker in J.D. Bertrand at 143. Running back depth in Jace McClellan at 186. And then they close out this draft with Casey Washington and Zion Logue, 2 players that weren't on my top 300. So it's a B- because I'm a big Penix believer. He was QB3 in the draft for me. They got him at the 8th overall pick. Mm-hmm. And I like Dorlus and Trice to bring toughness to this front. And Arroyo is not a bad prospect at all. He was a top 75. I just don't understand him over Johnny Newton. But the drama that came with this, there's no denying it hurts the grade.
Yeah. There's a world where this draft could work out for the Falcons. There is. I'm not saying that there's no way that this is going to work out, because if I thought that, I'd give it in a D or an F. And I can't, and I'm not. But it's close. I'm giving it a C-. The asset management with getting Michael Penix at 8 does not make you better as a team right now. And this team is vying for the division. They are trying to make the playoffs. They're trying to give themselves a shot to be the NFC South champs over the next couple of years and really solidify themselves. That's what you say, and that's what you go do when you give Kirk Cousins all that money. And look, the whole, I think people are going to talk about like Kirk's emotions and him, not wanting the security. Like, you got to tough up and you just got to go out there and you got to compete. And okay, I get that. But you also know what kind of quarterback do you sign. And I feel like this move doesn't exactly do that. So whether or not you think that's right of Cousins to maybe be a little slighted from this and feel like he was lied to or deceived, it just kind of is the situation. So you can sit here and say he's got to tough up, and he will. Obviously, he's going to be the starting quarterback in week 1, but I'm just telling you, it's the reality of the situation. So the Falcons knew that, and they went ahead and did this anyways, picking Rook over Johnny Newton, but also Braden Fisk as well, who I had ranked over Rook Arororo. I had other edge rushers
Chris
as
Jenkins.
well, Rick over him, Chris Jenkins rated over him. That's a reach for me. Braylon Trice, I don't think is a major difference maker as an edge rusher. I think he's a specialized edge rusher because I don't think he really wins off speed. I think he just tries to go through you like we talked about with Marshawn Nealand, and you don't really do that a lot at the NFL level, so we'll see. I like the versatility of Brandon Dorlus. Now the combination of Arroyo and Dorlus, now all of a sudden I do like that a lot. Now you've got some good versatility in there for Raheem Morris's multiple defensive front. That's nice, but you look at this draft, Connor, this team needed a cornerback. This team needed a cornerback, and they don't come away with any.
After Terry Fontenot was we kind of forgot.
You got A.J. Terrell on one side, who is in the last year of his deal, by the way.
Yeah.
And then you're starting Clark Phillips as an outside corner on the outside because you got Mike Hughes that you got to play in the nickel.
You make great points.
There's nobody after that. There's no depth at corner after that. Those are your starting quarterbacks. There's no other options. You could have had Kool-Aid McKinstry at 35.
That's a good callback. Yeah, it's tough. Tough.
I don't hate these players, but I do not think the Falcons are really that better of a team after this weekend. Now, Michael Penix Jr. could turn out to be a 10-year franchise quarterback for you, so it's a great long-term investment. But we all like to operate in long-term investments, and as I've said before on this podcast, it's just not as guaranteed as we think. There are so very rarely you draft this guy and he's going to start here for the next 10 years. Oh, you draft this guy and he's going to be part of your organization for the next even half decade. You know, quick shit changes in this league.
I know.
And it felt like the Falcons were like, oh yeah, this is a draft where we got all the time in the world, baby. And I thought they should have been hitting the gas pedal a little bit more than that. So that's C- for me for the Atlanta Falcons.
Completely fair.
What about the Carolina Panthers?
I gave this a C+, and obviously context, their trade of not walking into this draft with the first rounder, moving up like that was always going to be an uphill battle from the start. I liked a couple of receivers better than Xavier Legette that they took at 32, and now I'm rooting for Legette. Like his post presser, Legette is awesome.
He's awesome, man.
Before that, like his story of like really having to grind to become the offense at South Carolina is like he's an easy guy to root for. Jonathan Brooks at 46, okay. Like I like Trey Benson and Jalen Wright better. I know I'm on an island with that. Brooks is fine. I had him in that same tier as them, so it's fine. Trevin Wallace at 72. I hated this pick. Me too. We had the whole Trevin Wallace conversation already. Like athlete over instincts. Jatavion Sanders at 101. Really like that. Shao Smith-Wade. Somebody that can play the slot for you. Jaden Crumedy, I thought was a pretty good pick at 200. Michael Barrett at 240, hard-nosed linebacker. I just didn't see a difference-making draft, Trevor, and it's hard for them to do that. But they got players that will help, but it felt like more by committee than like one significant place for me. That's how I land on a C+.
Yeah, I'm at a C+ as well. I don't hate this draft. The Trevin Wallace one is extremely puzzling to me. But in the first couple of picks, you got aggressive to go up and get your guy. Your guy, Xavier Legette, who, again, I love, I'm rooting for. I have A.D. Mitchell ahead of him. I have Ladd McConkey ahead of him. I think I had Jalen Polk ahead of him. Yep. I had Keon Coleman even ahead of him. Like, I had a lot of wide receivers ahead of him. But look, low moving cost, baby. Hometown dude gets to play for the Panthers is a great story. I hate like ragging on it too much because I do love the fact that he is getting to play for the Panthers. But objectively, as a draft analyst, it's a fine pick. I could have gone other directions with it. Jonathan Brooks, I don't mind. This is right around where I had him valued. He was, I think, prospect number 48 for me, and they drafted him at 46. And I think that people who might be killing it aren't totally taking into account like this offseason is just about finding out what you have in Bryce Young. You have to have a better running game than what they had last year.
So and they bought an offensive line, so they should.
And they signed the money on the offensive line. They have their tackles that they need to play better. They're comfortable with Austin Corbett playing center. The offensive line is what it is. You go get the talented running back that you could think could be an RB1 for you. So I really don't hate that one. Getting Jatavion Sanders in the 4th round, love that. Shaw Smith-Wade, I think he's more of a nickel, but that's fine. Jalen Crumedy, Michael Barrett, good players. This was between like a C+ and a B- for me. Same. I ended up with C+, but if you wanted to say like, how is this not a B-, I go, I could get into that. I could, especially with the Jatavion Sanders pick that I think could be a big-time swing pick to be a home run there for them. What about the New Orleans Saints? Would you give the Saints?
B+. It might be a 2-player draft, but it's a damn good one. I mean, Taliza Fuanga and Kool-Aid McKinstry, starter and starter. Spencer Rattler at 150, why not? Good value. Bub Means, vertical receiver at 170. Jalen Ford gets some help at off-ball linebacker. Christian Boyd at 199. Somebody claimed I after our big board show, I did not watch the tape because I had Christian Boyd at 195 and everyone else had him higher. He went 199. So Josiah Ezram, 239. Interesting hulking offensive lineman. I don't know if he has the movement skills for the NFL, but I mean, at 239, that's completely fine. I like the Saints draft. They just didn't have any round 3 or 4 picks, but I love walking out of the first 2 rounds with Fuanga and McKinstry. That should be starters there for a long time, and I think above average starters.
Yeah, I think this one's pretty simple for me. Like, I also gave the Saints an A. Like, what more could the Saints have done, honestly?
Yes.
And that's when I look at this, I don't know what more they could have done. They come away with Fuanga, who, like you said, I think could be a starting offensive tackle for you. McKinstry gives you flexibility to maybe move on from some of the corners, but if not, it's a really good cornerback room, really talented cornerback room there in New Orleans. You get Spencer Rattler to be that potential QB2. I don't love Bub Memes. He's a 5th-round pick. I don't love Jalen Forbes. He's a 5th-round pick.
Same for me, but like whatever.
Right, yeah. You get Christian Boyd in the 6th, and I think the team got better. So I'm giving the New Orleans Saints an A. Like you said, it's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. You get potentially a really nice backup in QB2, maybe a spot starter in Spencer Rattler. You get a potential starter in Fuanga and McKinstry. That's kind of what it's all about when you pick in the 1st round, the 2nd round, and then you don't pick until the 5th round. So I thought they did a pretty good job. Buccaneers.
Take it away, Trevor. Take it away.
This is an A draft. This is a vintage Jason Light draft here. Coming away with Graham Barton. It's just a vintage Light pick. A guy who played left tackle in college. You're going to move him inside. I think he's probably going to play center for this team, but they can kind of mix and match that offensive line during minicamp and training camp to figure out what works best. They needed more athletes on the edge. They got Yaya Diaby. Now they have Chris Braswell. They have some other edge players like Logan Hall and Joe Tryon-Shoyinka still there on the roster to where you don't have to ask Chris Braswell to come out there right away and be like a full-time edge rusher for you, but he's strong enough to defend the run. He's got really good speed to power. You can continue to develop him. So I still, that's not my favorite move for them, but I do like it. I really like the Tyke Smith move because that gives you more of a powerful player to play in the slot with Tavierre Thomas and Christian Izien. He can also play safety for you as well. So Tyke Smith, good pick there. Love the Jalen McMillan pick. I think Jalen McMillan is going to eat in this offense, truly. They've got Chris Godwin, they got Mike Evans, but Jalen McMillan can play in the slot for you. He could also play on the outside. I think the Trey Palmer then is the great complement to give you that vertical ability. So really nice receiver room there. Bucky Irving, baby! To the Buccaneers at 125. Jason phoned me in for this one. He let me know that they were doing it. No, I'm just kidding. But my RB5 in this class, they end up getting him at 125. I just think that Bucky Irving's a fantastic player. Really good contact balance, really good force missed tackle average, really consistent football player over the last 2 years. And look, okay, yeah, I mean, like, there's a reason why he's a 4th-round pick. I'm not comparing him to Bijan Robinson or anything, but I think he's a really good complement to what Rachaad White showed last year. And then you get Kalijah Klein, Delvin Culp, good depth players, good special teams players. A draft for me for the Buccaneers.
I tweeted as soon as the Bucky Irving pick came in that you got the keys to the war room. Like, it was so clear that this was the pick that Jason Light gave you for the draft. I gave this a B+. Graham Barton at 26 is awesome. Just like, it's such a feel-good pick. You know exactly what you're getting. This offensive line is starting to look a lot better. Chris Brett, what's that?
So when they showed like him getting drafted, somebody tweeted out, they're like, no girlfriend, didn't hug his mom, all business, future all pro, baby. I've got no doubt in my mind. Just sitting there over the chair, just the forearms flexed.
It's perfect. It's perfect. He is a really fun guy. He'll fit into Tampa really, really well. Braswell, the power profile it meshes with Diaby's explosive speed profile. You highlighted that really well. Tyke Smith, I mean, just a gritty slot player that will tackle. He sees everything so well. I didn't really love Jalen McMillan, but I like this spot for him. I feel like this is a good place for him to develop as a slot and be that zone eater that he was, where the tape was better in 2022. Bucky Irving, not too far off from where I had him. Elijah Klein, Devin Culp. Devin Culp's a really good athlete at tight end. I'll be keeping an eye on him in the preseason. So B+ for the Bucs.
All right, final division we have here.
We made it.
NFC West. San Francisco 49ers. What'd you think?
I gave them a B-. I love that they had, quite frankly, just the balls to take Ricky Pearsall at 31, because I thought like Pearsall's really good and he'll just be the ideal receiver for Kyle Shanahan that knows how to get open and catch everything.
Yep.
I wasn't as high on Renardo Green as consensus.
I liked him, man.
I know. Everyone really did. I think he gets grabby. I don't think he gets his head around to make plays as much, but I think he has the physical profile of an NFL corner, and they do a really good job with corners traditionally. So I'm curious how this one works out. Good value on Dominic Pooney, who's a starter for me on the offensive line at 86. Malik Mustafa at 124. Isaac Guerendo, classic. Brett Coleman predicted the Guerendo to a Shanahan.
Oh, dude.
Like 5 months ago. Perfection.
Yes. Shout out to Brett for that one.
He nailed it. He nailed it. He was on Guerendo before anyone else was. Jacob Cowing, a slot receiver that just knows how to get open. Jarrett Kingston, Tatum Bethune. I definitely didn't have Bethune on my top 301. So, yeah, it's a B- because I think Pooney and Pearsall and even Mustafa and Guerendo can like make an impact on this team. I'll be very curious how the Green situation plays out, because they're right about corners. I feel like more so where I could be wrong, but a solid draft for the Niners all around.
Is a B+, and it makes sense that you have him as a B-. I have him as a B+, because I like Renardo Green more than you do.
Exactly.
Right? I like the Ricky Pearsall pick. I think it gives him a ton of flexibility for what they might want to do with Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel. Hell, even if you keep both of them, Ricky Pearsall can be a great receiver for you as a depth player in the short term, and maybe long term. Obviously, you want him to be a starter as a first-round pick. Renardo Green, I thought they had a need at corner. He's one of the best press man corners that we have in this class. I've got a lot of faith in him to be a really good corner in this league, so that really hits a need with a top-tier player. Dominic Pooney, also, they had an offensive line need, a little bit of an interior need, or potentially a tackle need. Dominic Pooney, to me, can be exactly that. He could play either spot for you, either at guard or tackle, so I do like that. And then even Malik Mustafa, who we were lower on than consensus, it felt like. The Niners have Talanoa Hufanga, and he plays that roaming kind of like enforcer role over the middle, that downhill safety, and Mustafa's a really good backup for that. When Hufanga got hurt last year, I think it really hurt this team. And so now you have a guy with that similar skill set that if that ever happens again, Mustafa can come in, and you don't have to just kind of change what you do on the back end because you have that. And then, look, Isaac Guerendo, Jacob Cowing, I like those guys as fourth-round depth pieces, some players who could surprise you, play a little bit of special teams, and maybe give you a couple special plays. So I gave the San Francisco 49ers a B+. What about the Seattle Seahawks?
I have been texted that it's Malik Mustafa.
Oh, Malik.
By the way. And I double-checked in their pronunciation guide, and that's how they have it there, too. So
okay, all right. I went Malik Mustafa.
That's what it says.
It's also more intimidating than Malik.
I agree.
So this actually fits really well.
Yes. Where do you want to go next?
It's really good to learn how to pronounce guys' names after the draft is over. That's really good. That's a really good. Good thing. That's what you want. I've only been saying his name for the last 8 damn months.
Same. Guilty as charged.
All right, Seattle. What'd you think of Seattle?
B+. Byron Murphy, kind of game-wrecking interior defensive lineman. Christian Haynes, nasty starter at guard. Tyrese Knight. I thought I liked Tyrese Knight. They really liked Tyrese Knight pretty early. AJ Barner, big-time blocking tight end. Nehemiah Pritchett, speedy corner. And then they just kind of, clean up here in round 6. Like Satua Lumea, a limited tackle that I think is going to be a fine guard. DJ James. I like that they took both Auburn corners, and they're like, let's see what happens here. Michael
It's kind of awesome.
So I thought they got 2 starters from rounds 1 and 3. Murphy, an above-average starter. Haynes, an average starter. Barner, a tight end 2 because of his blocking. And then one of Pritchett and James will hit at corner. Good draft for Seattle.
Yeah, B+ for me as well. Getting Byron Murphy at 16, really good value for him. I think that's a need. Getting Christian Haynes, another need that you're filling with. Man, getting Christian Haynes at 81, excellent.
And they needed a guard.
Huh?
They really needed a guard. And Lumea might push someone there. So we'll see.
He is fantastic. I think he's going to be a starter for them there. Tyrese Knight in the 4th round. All right, a little early for me, but that's all right. AJ Barner I like specifically for this team because they have these tight ends on the roster right now who are sort of like receiving tight ends, right? I think that Noah Fant at the top. They have Farrell Brown as well, but like AJ Barner immediately becomes that heavy set tight end. So when you go 12 personnel, he's immediately that tight end that comes in that's attached to the line of scrimmage that's really able to take on those blocks where maybe one of those other guys is on the outside. They're off the line of scrimmage. They're able to get more of a free release. So I definitely see the usage there. And then sure, cornerback depth. You go with Pritchett. You go with James, and I think that those are 2 talented corners from Auburn who, yeah, like you said, like you'll just see who kind of comes out on top. And then I actually like Lumea's ability to maybe be a starting interior offensive lineman. I know he played tackle, but I like him more as on the interior. He could be a really nice depth piece for them early on, maybe be a spot starter at some point throughout his rookie contract. So B+ draft here for me for the Seahawks. I can see exactly the types of players and how they're going to fit on this team. I do really like this draft from them. What'd you think of the Arizona Cardinals? We got 2 more teams left.
So I gave the Cardinals an A-. I thought they got the best player in the draft in Marvin Harrison Jr. I think Darius Robinson is a starter. I don't think he's an impact starter. Everybody knew he was going in round 1, and Cardinals were the team that took him. I thought there was a lot of better players they simply could have taken at 27. He is the reason this honestly could have been my only A+. It's an A- though. Max Melton at 43, inside, outside corner, great instincts, great athleticism. Trey Benson, my top running back. Isaiah Adams, starter at guard, really good run blocker. Tip Ryman at 82, didn't see that coming.
Didn't see that one coming.
Okay. Like, they just did some weird things. Elijah Jones at 90, probably a starting corner on the outside. Dadrian Taylor Demerson, ball hawking safety, although he's undersized. Xavier Thomas at 138, absolutely. Get some edge help. Christian Jones, 162. A lot of penalties, but a long-time starter. I had him 152. So depth at tackle. Sure, why not there? Tawan Palmer and Jaden Davis. I don't think I had either of them in my top 301. But A-, you got the best player in the draft. You got the best running back in the draft. You got one of the most versatile athletic corners in the draft. You got a ball-hawking safety. I mean, Xavier Thomas at 138, sure. And Darius Robinson is not bad. I just do not see any upside that I look for in a first-round pick.
I was between a B and a B+ for this team.
Okay.
I'll go B+. I ended up going with B+. Marvin Harrison Jr., obviously a home run. Darius Robinson, drafted way ahead of where I had him on the big board. But to be honest with you, of the teams that made the most sense for him to potentially go in the first round, Arizona was absolutely one of them. That Jonathan Gannon defense, him being able to play more of a 3-4 defensive end spot, so he could play either a 4-eye and utilize his length and strength combination. You could play him at 5 technique as well. You can kick him inside to 3 technique at times. That versatility in this landing spot specifically, even though I wasn't the highest on Robinson, this makes the most sense to me, right? A lot of people talked about, oh, he's a Detroit Lion through and through. If the Detroit Lions drafted him and just asked him to play 5 technique defensive tackle, or defensive end, that's not worth a first-round pick. Like, that's not utilizing what Darius Robinson could do for you. This is actually a landing spot where I go, okay, the first round's still rich for me, but I get how you're going to maximize what this guy does as a hybrid defense, interior defensive lineman, and defensive end. Max Melton, my guy. I like him a good amount. Trey Benson, good football player. So, I mean, you're increasing the talent in the running back room. Isaiah Adams, big time overdraft for me. Like, if he's going to play on the interior for you, Cooper Beebe, Christian Haynes, Dominic Pooney, Mason McCormick,
Very
all of
fair.
these guys, Christian Mahogany, like, I have all these guys rated ahead of Isaiah Adams. So that kind of brings it down for me. Tip Ryman, I see exactly why they drafted him. I know exactly why you drafted him. You want him to be that on the line of scrimmage type of blocker for you. You free up Trey McBride. It allows you to have multiple heavy personnel flexibility. I know why you drafted him. I just do not think you needed to draft him here. And I felt as though the Arizona Cardinals and Monty Ossenfort went, we got a shit ton of picks. Like, let's streamline exactly what we want to try to get here, which isn't a bad thing. I just think that you could have done it at 90. You could have done it at 104. Hell, I think you could have even done it at 138. And they did it at 82. So that's not great for me.
You could have signed Mercedes Lewis to do the same thing for $1 million.
Nah, and Ryman's good. Like, he's a good football, and he's a much better athlete than your typical, like, blocking tight end. So I know why you liked him. I just didn't think you needed to do it at 82. Elijah Jones at 90, press man type of physical corner, but again, like, you didn't need to do this at 90. There were a lot of other corners that I would have much more preferred at 90 for them, for as much as they even wanted to hit that position. This is where it gets good, though. I like Dadrian Taylor Demerson. Xavier Thomas, love that as well. Christian Jones, really like that pick as an experienced offensive tackle to maybe come in for a pinch if you need him to be able to do so. So I ended up going with a B+, but that's my overall evaluation of the Arizona Cardinals. I know people are probably going to be mad at me, like, how is this draft not an A? Well, I just explained to you why.
Good reasoning. It was an A. Go off, King.
B+ there. Last team, Los Angeles Rams. What do we got for the Rams?
Nice to close it out with an A for the Rams. Jared Verse, one of the best defensive players in the draft. They get him at 19. Braden Fisk, 39. It was so cool how happy Fisk was to play with Jared Verse again. That was such a really cool moment. Blake Corum at 83. Like, I think did I have Corum at 83? I might have had Corum I had Corum as my 83rd overall player in the draft.
Look at that. You love it when it comes together.
Cam Kinchins, I mean, I had him 96. They take him at 99. I think he's more versatile and has more ball hawking skills than people realize. Brennan Jackson at 154. Some brawn on the edge.
Love it.
Tyler Davis, beef. Joshua McCarty, Jordan Whittington. You know McVay loves these gritty blocking receivers like Jordan Whittington. Bo Limmer at 217 and KT Leviston at 254.
Excellent.
I evaluated them as interior offensive lineman starters. Like maybe fringe starters, but starters. And McVay has shifted to a gap scheme. He has paid a ton of money to these gap scheme guards. If one of them get hurt, KT Leviston is great depth for that. Bo Limmer, great center depth. Like, this draft was an A. I mean, they got guys that I think will be on this roster. There might be 6 guys from this draft that are on this roster for the long term, which is nuts to say about a draft.
I gave this draft a B+. Don't kill me! And the only reason I did is because they traded a future second rounder just to move up 13 spots.
Yeah. Okay. That's drunk recklessness, yes.
That's crazy.
I did. That's an oversight from me.
And so, like, this draft, like, the players, I completely agree with everything that you said. Verse is going to be great for him. Although, I think it's kind of interesting because Verse's grades and performance was so much better as a hand-in-the-dirt 4-3 defensive end. And if they're staying with an odd front, then...
Very curious.
It's not as streamlined. It could totally work out. Versus really talented, but that I kind of factored into this as well. Love Braden Fisk. Love Blake Corum, especially now that him and Kyron Williams are in the same committee. That's amazing. Cam Kinch is a great pick for this team. Love that they continue to go defensive line with Brennan Jackson and Tyler Davis, totally revamping and giving some youth to that group all around. You throw in Byron Young from last year. You throw in Kobe Turner. Like, this is a new world order, if you will, with the defensive line. This is the NWO of the Los Angeles Rams now, their front. So I do love all that they did there. Joshua McCarty, highest graded kicker that we've ever had at PFF. Jordan Whittington, my son. I just love this. You want to know who Puka Nacua is of this year's class? It's Jordan Whittington, baby. That's who it is. They've done it again. Former high school absolute superstar, and he just wasn't able to become that type of player at the college level because of injuries, which really sucks. But I love Jordan Whittington. Love the fact that he's with Sean McVay. Hope they see the vision. I think they do. And then I agree with you, man. 2 potential starters along the interior offensive line in Bo Limmer and KT Leviston. So I really like what the Rams were able to do this year. I thought that giving up the second just to move up 13 picks in the second was a little wild for me. But hey, that's a less need draft, and they got really good players, so I couldn't give it anything worse than a B+. If you want to argue A-, that's fine. I can get with that because of the players that they had there. There we go. Those are our draft grades for all 32 teams from the 2024 NFL Draft. As always, we would love to hear what you guys thought. Please sound off in the comment section, youtube.com/@NFL Stock Exchange. I know there's going to be tons of opinions. We want to hear what you guys thought of our thoughts here, but we also want to hear your thoughts. Like in the big board episode, we want to hear your rankings, your final mock drafts for the mock draft episode, all that stuff. Fire it off in the comments. Start some conversations. Reply to people. I mean, that's when this comment section is so fun, and we're so fortunate here on this channel that you guys have provided us with a great NFL draft community to have some really great draft thoughts, some constructive draft thoughts, and great conversations that we love getting involved with. So please hit us up in the comment sections. Let us know what you thought of the draft grades of your team, of your players, everything. If you're audio only, you can hit us up on Twitter and Instagram as well, at Tampa Bay Trey, at Connor J. Rogers. Connor, you got anything else before we get out of here?
No, huge thank you to everybody, especially if you sat through every single team of this show. It's something we love doing. We try to put this together as fast as we can for you guys. And please, I will say one last thing, and I know this is a big ask, and it's the biggest ask we'll ever ask any of you. If you, like, this for a lot of people is kind of the end of their season with us, draft grades, and I just ask you to give us a chance during summer scouting. Even if you're one of those that's like, man, I've never followed the draft year round. I don't like college football. January or February comes around, I get back into my draft shows, and I get it. I really get it. Like, you're not all like truly sick like Trevor and I and a lot of the addicts, but you might like it more than you think because it's not just nitty gritty. Like, I think this guy has no agility or he's probably going in the 6th round. Summer scouting's loose. It's laid back. It's all about football. It's all about fun. It's a good introduction. We definitely have a lot more laughs. So stick with us if you can because we don't go anywhere during the summer.
Extremely well said, my friend. I absolutely love the summer scouting episodes that we get to do. We'll obviously keep talking about the 2024 NFL draft, but when we do get to turn the page, it's a lot of fun. I will say, though, we're going to take a little bit of time off before we get back to you guys, but we promise that we will be back here with you talking 2024 NFL draft and 2025 because, of course, that's just what we love to do. We love you guys. Thank you so much for all of the love and the support that you have given us throughout the 2024 NFL draft cycle. Like Connor said, we are so excited to continue this with you with 2025 in a couple of weeks. Until then, I'm Trevor Sikkema. That is Connor Rogers. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening to the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. We'll see you guys next time.